The people who've been saying this stuff for decades are suddenly ahead of everyone else. There's no more denying it. It's time to do your due diligence. It's time to actually look into this. And for everyone who spent years doubting them, now's your chance to help shine a light on the darkness. I'll have the EFTA numbers on your screen so you can look it up yourself. The files are making a difference. Many more people are waking up to realities that they never would even consider possible. And while that's great news, there's still much work to be done. But think about what we've covered. The majority is now willing to accept that Epstein was funding a genetics operation, was a part of a secret society, and was experimenting with consciousness and special abilities. Everyone's cool with that. Conspiracies are basically becoming mainstream. But hold up, because there are things conspiracy theorists have been saying for decades. And you know what else they've been saying? Going back at least to the 60s. Hollywood. This genre of movie exposés, connecting films to real-world conspiracies and coding agendas hidden in plain sight, has been a cornerstone of the internet since the beginning of YouTube. Without a shadow of a doubt, you're about to witness the veil be lifted. Do the elites use Hollywood to encode their agenda in plain sight? But this test only works if you understand two things, and I'm going to show you both. One, that secret societies have been behind Hollywood since the beginning. And two, movies aren't just entertainment, they're initiation devices. The theater is the temple, the screen is the ritual. I'm about to show you how Hollywood has been telling you to your face what's been going on for at least 60 years. And we just accepted it, did nothing. My thesis is simple. Hollywood knew. And there's one movie that I believe proves it. Why? Because it connects directly to the files. Now let me present my case. Now I know what skeptics are going to say. Pattern recognition, survivorship bias, Texas sharpshooter fallacy. That's when you shoot first and draw the target after. You watch 1,000 movies and some are going to match reality. And they're right about all that, unless you have the target first. We have the files. The documents drew the target. I'm just checking which movies hit it. So no, I'm not just going off of vibes, and I'm not saying trust me bro. You must learn the art and science of occult film analysis. Yes, a new occult art form, and you're about to learn it. I'm not going to explain it, I'm going to show you. It's time for you to wake up that you've been secretly initiated into a brotherhood from childhood. I will explain this by the end of the video. So there's already a lot here, but what makes this even more next level is, well, we have the files. Let me just give you a taste of how connected Epstein was to Hollywood. A payment ledger, $469,000 in 11 months from Jeffrey Epstein to a Hollywood premiere publicist. A Hollywood producer, $326,000 in debt, listing his movie fees to Epstein as proof he can pay it back. Bones, Enchanted, Dirty Grandpa. Epstein told him to send this info to him. How much are you asking for? A fake audition. Same producer writes to Epstein about a girl who had a rough audition. Quote, I could have done the fake version of an audition and gotten her on tape. Then offers, I can set up the fake audition for her and have her loved on like crazy. Aspiring actresses solicited for dinner with Woody Allen. Quote, if you have any aspiring actresses, Woody and I are having dinner on Sunday. And a private film screening, 3 years after his conviction. The guest list, Eric Schmidt, Lorne Michaels, Brian Williams, a Rothschild. Epstein emails the CEO of Activision Blizzard about visiting SpaceX with the girls, then writes, taking girls after to Bel Air. And the CEO of DreamWorks is in the files? And that's just a preview. We have a lot to cover, but I wanted to show you that first so that we can actually understand what we're dealing with here. The film that I believe exposes all of this, ironically, is literally called The Island. made in 2005. This movie's the blueprint, and they had the audacity to call it The Island and put a Freemason compass on the cover. These are the type of people that we're dealing with. It's a mockery. They're showing you the secrets right to your face. Let me show you. The Island, 2005, directed by Michael Bay, produced by DreamWorks, starring Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson. 126 million budget. Okay, so the main premise is, in a near future underground facility, hundreds of people believe that they're the last survivors of a global contamination. Their only hope is a lottery win, and if you win, you get sent to the island, the last uncontaminated paradise on Earth. But as the movie goes on, we find out that the lottery is a lie. These people are clones, grown as insurance policies for wealthy sponsors. When your sponsor needs a new kidney, a new heart, a surrogate pregnancy, you win the lottery. They then harvest your organs and you die. For a 126 million Michael Bay movie, the action is surprisingly weak. I mean, think about it. Where did this movie even come from? Michael Bay, really? Sure, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of VFX shots. But to me, it seems like a lot of the money went to the blueprint, the message. And I'm not the only one who sees this. Right now, the entire internet would agree this film is extremely sus. But now it's time to prove it. Alright, so we're about to get started. I just need to make a crucial distinction that many people new to this field of study may miss. People literally think Michael Bay directed this film. Remember the framework we're working from. What you will witness in this film, which is a common pattern in many films, especially in the early 2000s, is you have a front-end director and a back-end director. Basically, an exoteric director and an esoteric director. But just to be clear, this isn't common knowledge and there's no proof that this is true. However, I'm about to show you this is the case, and you, the audience, can be the judge. So, for The Island, there's the front-end director. That's the guy whose name's on the poster. Michael Bay. Explosions, Puma ads, car chases, the hype music. That's the entertainment. That's what's gonna keep you in your seat for 2 hours. It's pretty obvious when he's directing. Okay, but then there's the back-end director. You never see their name, and we cannot say for certain who this is. But anyone with any ounce of film knowledge will be able to notice a difference in directing. They work through the script, the set design, the framing, the symbols placed in the background. They encode information into the film that the front-end director may not even understand is there. When I show you what's inside this movie, you're gonna see both directors working. And once you can tell them apart, you'll never watch a film the same way again. With that, you know the film, you know the premise and the framework. Now let me show you why this isn't just another movie review. This movie is connected to the files. Let's start with the Scarlett connection since she is the main star of the movie. EFTA 01846326. Epstein's own words. Ask Woody's assistant if they want to invite Scarlett Johansson, as she is in New York. That is okay. So in 2012, Epstein personally requests Scarlett Johansson at his dinner through Woody Allen. EFTA 02176-395. Catherine, Woody's assistant, Woody said he has a call into Scarlett, but he doubts she'll be able to come because she's working. But the attempt is documented. EFTA 016-18751. Epstein to Anil Ambani. I'm glad you prefer young blondes to old ones. I had some guests here with unusual taste. The Indian billionaire Anil Ambani tells Epstein his next movie is with Scarlett Johansson, and that was Epstein's response. Now this is not a direct connection to the film, as this is going to set the context of what you're about to see. EFTA 02604748, a fun spreadsheet for the Designer Baby and Human Cloning Company. someone sent Epstein a use of funds spreadsheet for a designer baby and human cloning company. August 2018. Okay, so DreamWorks released a film about cloning humans for the wealthy, and the CEO of DreamWorks had a screening event where Peggy Siegel directly invited Epstein to, the man who was being pitched a literal cloning company. Okay, so let's talk about this DreamWorks CEO, Katzenberg. Here's what ties the whole thing together. In 1979, a low-budget film called Parts, the clonus horror, screened at Paramount Pictures. It has the same plot as The Island, clones grown for the wealthy. And the man who watched that screening was Jeffrey Katzenberg. He was VP of feature production at Paramount. According to the filmmaker, Katzenberg told him, "If you can make that for under $1 million, I'd like to see what you could do with 10. 25 years later, Katzenberg's company, DreamWorks, released The Island, $126 million budget, 90 documented points of similarity, and they settled the lawsuit for 7 figures, term sealed. Okay, so now let me show you the paper trail. EFTA 020-25245, September 4th, 2012. An invite goes out from Allison Reddington at the Peggy Siegel Company, and I want you to look at the CCs, Peggy Siegel herself, and the invite says, Jeffrey Katzenberg invites you to join director Peter Ramsey and producer Christina Steinberg for an intimate first look at DreamWorks Animation's Rise of the Guardians. This invite was sent directly to Epstein's personal email, EFTA 021-60988. 2 days later, Epstein's executive assistant, Leslie Groff, forwards the invite internally and writes, quote, Jeffrey will attend this movie screening this Sunday. EFTA 01886807, the RSVP chain. Epstein's assistant, do you want me to RSVP for the screening on Sunday, September 9th? Epstein replies, yes. And the response back is, great, I will RSVP you +1. +1. And then on the day of the screening, September 9th, 2012, Epstein emails Peggy, I won't come tonight to the screening. Call if you get a chance. And Peggy writes back, where are you? Calling mobile right now. Of course you can come to anything. Then sends the details. It's the Rise of the Guardian, an amazing animated film Jeffrey Katzenberg is positioning for an Oscar. 5 p.m. at Dolby Screening Room. 6:30 p.m. casual dinner at the Monkey Bar for Katzenberg. If can't make film and want to see Jeffrey K, come. XOXO Peg. That's EFTA 02560713. We also must consider whether they're being secretive here. Now, who is Peg? Well, the original invite was sent from the Peggy Siegel Company. Peggy CC'd by full name on EFTA 020-25245 and EFTA 01886807, and the sign-off XOXO Peg matches another email from October 2016, EFTA 020411167, where Epstein's assistant reaches out to Peggy and says, hello Peggy, Jeffrey wants you to know he is here all week in case you want to see him. And Peggy responds, just emailed him, I'm on it. We'll send a list tonight and more tomorrow. XOXO Peg. So let me break down what we're actually looking at here. Peggy Siegel is not just some random publicist who happened to know Epstein. EFTA 01852482 is a payment ledger from a company called Wagging Tail Entertainment Limited, and it shows $469,781 paid to Peggy Siegel Incorporated in just 11 months, January through November 2011, 37 checks, and almost $500,000. But it would seem that Wagging Tail isn't just some random company. There's another document, EFTA 01994205. This lays out the entire financial structure. It says, all expenses for the Peggy Siegel Company are paid by Wagging Tail Entertainment Limited. And Wagging Tail Entertainment Limited pays a commission fee to Peggy Siegel Incorporated. The commission fee is equal to 60% of revenue less expenses. So Epstein's money goes into Wagging Tail pays all of Peggy's expenses, and Peggy gets a 60% commission. So she's the one, apparently, arranging screenings, dinners, and access to people like Jeffrey Katzenberg. And she was still doing it in 2016, years after his conviction. And this isn't just me connecting dots. There are multiple articles online talking about how Epstein used Hollywood publicist Peggy Siegel to re-enter elite circles. And the Hollywood Reporter called it a symbiotic relationship. So, we can say that she was arranging dinners at Epstein's mansion with Prince Andrew, George Stephanopoulos, Katie Couric. The news article reported tens of thousands in consulting fees. But it seems that the actual payment ledger says $469,781. Okay, but the Peggy files are pretty crazy. EFTA 01857662, August 12th, 2011. An email chain between Epstein and Peggy. The subject line is Accountant Michael Rubenstein. They're discussing normal business stuff, and then Epstein writes, quote, "Let the accountant and Michaels do everything. You schmooze and find me a baby mama." Peggy responds, quote, "A baby mama? If I wasn't 102, I would take that job in a nanosecond. Couldn't I be the auntie mama? I would be excellent at that job." Here's the problem. You have to find someone who will take it as a business deal and not get crazy emotional. A girl who wants a certain life that she can't get any other way is a candidate, but must be stable like a rock. Take note of this conversation because by the end of the video, you will read that email differently. Epstein replies, quote, "I need great genes, smart, pretty, funny." And Peggy comes back with, quote, "I'm thinking this is a position for a European who understands the mistress, in this case baby mama, mentality. You need someone young without much of a career, maybe a professional student, someone who's kept and can just keep going to school, getting all sorts of degrees. Also, who doesn't have much of a family herself. The last thing you want is in-laws." And at the end of the same chain, Epstein writes, "No, but there is a commission paid from Wagging Tail." The same Wagging Tail. Again, they're being secretive. And that company was paying her $500,000 a year. EFTA 024-38648, October 19th, 2009. The subject line is tall kids. Peggy writes to Epstein, quote, "Remember when you asked me what is the most important trait for a child, and I said height, then intelligence?" EFTA 024-33105, December 18th, 2009. Peggy's on a plane to Nairobi with her daughter, Maddie, heading to Kenya safari that Epstein paid for, and she emails him from the plane, quote, "Can I bring a little baby bag for you, or two? Boys or girls, so Madonna." EFTA 01831012, December 24th, 2010. Peggy writes Epstein from St. Barth's, quote, "Please be careful about walking around with 3 girls. Even though they're legal, I worry about your social resurrection." Resurrection? And then July 2012, EFTA 018777490. Leslie Groff relays a message from Peggy to Epstein, quote, "Peggy says that she does not want young girls with no last names at the screening on Wednesday night of the campaign. She says the press will be there. She requests over 30. Whoa, what? Girls at screenings? And then there's this. EFTA 01953263. Epstein's personal reminder notes. His assistant sends him a list and says it's Denial Engine, Music as Lens, Leon Gettner, Katzenberg, Museum of Modern Music, Botstein, David Blaine, Benefit, Tish Game, Gates, Dinner. Katzenberg is on the same reminder list as Gates. So the CEO of DreamWorks saw this cloning story in 1979. His studio remade it with the movie The Island in 2005, and he is in the files. Private screenings, Oscar dinners, personal invitations, all arranged through a publicist who Epstein paid $500,000 a year. The same publicist he asked to find me a baby mama with great genes, smart, pretty, and funny. And it would seem that Peggy knew about the girls, as he was told no young girls with no last names. Basically, she's the bridge between Epstein and Hollywood, and some of these emails have a eugenics undertone. Okay, so you have the files and the connections. Now let me show you this film and you tell me if this is a coincidence. The film opens up and we're flying over an island. And already we need to pay attention because this is a dream sequence. However, it becomes apparent that this is no normal dream. It's a false memory being implanted. We see this paradise, this island, and it looks heavenly, almost like an afterlife. But there's something very dark about this. There is an angelic woman, but also terrifying at the same time. This is a femme fatale Lucifer reference. Take note for later. Then we hear, "You're special. You have a very special purpose in life." And then, "You've been chosen." These are MK Ultra programmed messages. And right as this is happening, we get a butterfly on the screen. That's the signal for Monarch programming. Okay, but the thing is, you wouldn't see that if you were watching the film normally. This whole beginning sequence is in quick flashes. And there's also a shot where there's a memory of when he was 8 years old, which is weird because there's no indication on why they chose 8. 8 is Saturn. We found out later that these clones don't have real memories. So why does he remember being 8? And in that same shot, one-eye symbolism. Pay attention to this, because there are countless one-eye symbols in this movie. 3 times, okay, it's a cool cinematic choice. 20 times, it's undeniable. It's being used as a control, enlightenment, and initiation symbol. We're going to be counting them. And then we see hazmat suits. People in hazmat suits and radioactive imagery all flashing throughout this dream. Okay, this is crazy because the Epstein survivor, Juliette Bryant, testified she woke up paralyzed in a laboratory at Zorro Ranch, and she mentioned people in hazmat suits. She even said that Michael Bay was present at the ranch in 2004, 1 year before this film. Guys, I'm not saying it's true, but do you realize how crazy this is? An Epstein victim accused Michael Bay of being present at the ranch in 2004, the same ranch that she claimed there was a secret lab. Alright, now focus. Then, a man wakes up. It was just a dream. But was it? Good morning, Lincoln 6 Echo. An AI monitored room. The man is confused. It would seem we're in some futuristic environment because the AI system in this facility immediately picks up that he's having erratic REM sleep cycles, meaning someone or something is monitoring his dreams. We find out that his name is Lincoln 6 Echo. Weird name, right? Well, it's not a name, it's an entry, an ID, a serial number. But we'll come back to the esoteric symbolism towards the end. The man who just woke up from this dream is clearly confused and doesn't know what's going on. There's a notification to report to the Tranquility Center. Seems pretty chill. So he goes to the Tranquility Center, and this is kind of weird. Notice how thought out everything is. So first, he has to go through a wake-up contamination screening process. Then he gets dressed, and of course, he has to put on his Puma shoes. Well, he's missing a shoe, and he talks to a camera on the wall, and we find out that there's some control center. This implies that this man is a part of some type of large experiment. Someone is sitting in front of multiple monitors watching all of this. Every single thing these people do is monitored. But the movie is very fast-paced, so it doesn't explain what's happening just yet. And keep in mind, when people were watching this in 2005, they most likely didn't really suspect anything weird. But now with fresh eyes, it's easy to see. So he leaves his cell and he starts walking in the hallway with a bunch of other people wearing the same clothing. They get into an elevator, and this scene is where we find out some more of the lore. The elevator AI system says, "Good morning, July 19th, 2019. Now, this film came out in 2005, but they set it to 2019. So were they saying that this technology, human cloning, organ harvesting, all of this was going to be possible by 2019? That's a very interesting date to pick, is all I'm saying. And ask yourself, if you're a skeptic of a reality like this, why haven't these experiments happened? Let's just say this. It's not the tech. It's laws. The tech already exists. So we know the year, but technically this is the future in 2005. Right after the elevator AI says the date, then this guy from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody says, "Another day in paradise." Take note of that word, paradise. So they're chilling in the elevator when an announcement on the screen comes on. It's an advertisement for the lottery. Basically a MK Ultra commercial. Why is it MK Ultra? MK Ultra is when the images flash fast so you can't process them and it goes directly to your subconscious. You'll see this throughout the whole film. So this commercial comes up with this hype music and it has these flashing images. Clearly trance-inducing as they all stop what they're doing and stare. Boom. The island. Your prize. The island winner. Starkweather 2 Delta. And then we get an attractive woman who appears on the screen and says in a sensual voice, "Your time has come. You're moving out to the island." Then the winner, Starkweather 2 Delta, played by Michael Clark Duncan, is on the screen and he's the celebrity talking about how the biggest dream of his life just came true. And then he says, "I've only been with you guys for like 6 months, but I won." He's Mr. Popular. He can't believe it. He's going to the island. And notice the circular black and white background. This does create a hypnotic effect on the viewer. This is a fake celebrity endorsement being used to sell the lottery to the rest of the people here. Does that remind you of anything? So Starkweather won, and he's freaking out because he gets to go to the island. That's what's happening in this scene. Okay, but let's take a few notes. This is a lottery system which is announced by, what I would argue, a sexually charged female announcer to a bunch of people who seem to be living in a controlled environment. And the biggest dream is to win this lottery, so you go to the island. Let's continue. The last thing that she says is the island is nature's last remaining pathogen-free zone. That's what they call the island. The beginning part is extremely detailed, so bear with me. It is all important. So they're still in the elevator, and this guy's getting upset because he's been here way longer than 6 months. Why does he never win? The lottery is literally stressing them out. And we cut back to the control room. We got a disturbance on elevator 12. So any change in hormonal level is monitored. Someone behind the scenes is tracking all of them. Then there's this conversation between the clones, and we find out that some of them have been here for 2 years, 3 years, and then this one guy says he's been here for 7 years. So we know that this operation has been running for at least 7 years. Then we get a zoom out wide shot of the facility, and look at this is crazy. It literally looks like a generator. And it also looks exactly like the pod towers from the Matrix where the humans are stored as batteries, which suggests the people in the experiment are being used as an energy source. So they get off the elevator, and the guy who was freaking out is now in trouble because he had a disturbance, meaning he got upset. So they ask him to swipe. So here's more lore. They all have these bracelets. The movie doesn't explain this, you have to pause and read it to understand it, but these cuffs are called ether cuffs, which supports the idea that they're batteries. Why else would you call it that? But these are ID bracelets, the mark of the beast. Also note that the guards are in black suits, so they are the men in black, the men outside the Matrix with the knowledge of the true system. He scans the bracelet, pulls up the profile on the tablet, Gondu 3 Echo. You've been flagged for public disturbance before. Now we start to see the inside. We're in a main lobby and a cafeteria area. everyone in this experiment is wearing the same exact white clothes. They're basically all just hanging out in this Brave New World looking lab. It does actually look a lot like that 80s movie. But this scene is showing all the public facilities and amenities. They have yoga, entertainment, a bar. They're all just hanging out in paradise, right? Except everything's monitored. And again, extremely detailed. Not in the actual plot or the action scenes, but in the lore and specifics of this experiment. To me, it's clear that this is where the majority of the effort was. For example, so Lincoln goes to get some food and he scans his ether cuff at the cafeteria and immediately the AI flags him. Nutrition warning, and it tells him exactly what he can eat. Choices are fruit, oatmeal, or any type of bran. But weirdly, he really wants bacon, and the lunch lady says, "You got a nutrition flag, that means no bacon." So the system decides what you eat. He tries to get eggs and sausage, but again the lunch lady rejects him. So he just gets goop. But then this woman walks up to him and says, "Watch and learn." This is Jordan 2 Delta. And notice, she's a Delta. Lincoln is an Echo. So those are different classifications. And the second she gets to the counter, the lunch lady's whole attitude changes. So she goes up there and gets 4 or 5 pieces of bacon. A Delta can override the system, but Echoes can't. And she gives the bacon to Lincoln. I just think it's weird that they chose bacon. But keep in mind, this is subtle Sophia symbolism. In a way, Jordan is Lincoln's guide and inspiration. Okay, but I went over that because this whole skit right here is just a eugenics Brave New World scene. There's a class system, Deltas get treated better than Echoes, different privileges, different food, and the people in the experiment don't even question why. Well, immediately one of the guards separates them. There are proximity rules. They're not even allowed to get close to each other. And this is a strange scene. So they're all sitting down and they're all simultaneously reading from a book. And it's literally Dick and Jane. "Who wants Sally?" said Dick. "I do, Jane. I cannot find Sally." "Get up, Dick, get up and help me find Sally." But these are adults reading children's books. They're being maintained at a child's level, so clearly that's programming. Next, we meet Dr. Merrick. Lincoln gets called in to see Dr. Merrick, and we meet the main guy behind all of this. Look at his office. Notice the Picasso painting on the wall? And he does have this orb object on his desk, almost like a Palantir. So Merrick sits Lincoln down, and the whole vibe's like a therapist session. "How's Lincoln 6 Echo today? My only job is to see that you're happy." But then he starts pulling up the files. The files show that you've been regularly interacting with Jordan 2 Delta. Proximity could become a concern. So he knows everything. He even knows that Lincoln's been having nightmares. So Merrick asks him to tell him about the dream. And Lincoln says, "I'm on a boat, heading to the island." And Merrick goes, "A boat?" He's obviously caught off guard. What kind of boat? Because why would Lincoln know what a boat is? He's never seen one. He's lived in this facility his whole life. The fact that he said boat means that something is leaking through. Merrick asks what happens in the dream, and Lincoln says, "I drown." And Merrick says, "Well, maybe you're afraid of winning." And Lincoln says, "Why would I be afraid of winning?" But Merrick just says, "You tell me." So Lincoln is starting to question everything. Who decided everyone likes tofu? Why can't I have bacon? Why is everyone wearing white? Who cleans my clothes? I just want to know answers. And I wish that there was more. And Merrick goes, "More?" And Lincoln says, "More than just wanting to go to the island." He's waking up now. He's asking questions that nobody else asks. Why do I eat this? Why do I wear this? Who runs this place? And then Merrick hits him with this. It's your nature to question things. But don't you realize how lucky you are? You survived the contamination. That nature has left you a Garden of Eden to repopulate. That, Lincoln, is your purpose. Garden of Eden? Repopulation? Are you listening? This is the cover story, and it's biblical. God telling the creation its purpose. And then Lincoln asked him, "And you? Aren't you going to the island too?" And Merrick just says no, he's not going. He has to run this place. He's the god of this world. Then Merrick looks at Lincoln's drawings and sees that he's been sketching a boat. And at the bottom of the drawing it says, Renovatio. This is always in his dream. Renovatio. Take a note of that. So Merrick says he wants to run some tests. Nice test, he calls them. And then he brings Lincoln into this lab, and there's a machine that locks him down. He's gonna do a synaptic brain scan. And Merrick says, totally harmless. Don't worry, it's painless. The scan works through nanotechnology. It's these tiny spider-like robots that crawl through his eye. So bug symbolism. And Lincoln goes, "It hurts." And Merrick just says, "Not really." Lincoln's like, "Yeah, it does." But Merrick, like a hypnotist, says, "No, it doesn't." Then look at this shot. The microsensors will move along your optic nerve. They'll be uploading readings to us over the next 24 hours. So in 2005, they are showing you this technology in detail. Notice the one-eye symbolism in the same frame as the nanotech. That's not an accident. Oh, and by the way, I will point out the product placements because think about it. How dystopian is it to be watching a movie about this and getting advertisements at the same time? That's 2005 for you. So Lincoln goes to work and we see this interface. It says the current operator is Lincoln and the task is to inject glutamine 2%, 12 milligrams into nutrient line A2. This flashes on the screen for maybe like a second, but look at the detail. This looks like real science, real IVF software. They designed an entire UI interface for this 1-second shot. And the job is basically this. Lincoln is sitting at a long table with these tubes laid across it, maybe 30 of them, half red, half blue, and his job is to inject specific amounts of nutrients into them. On the other side, there's another clone doing the same thing with the red tubes, which could be blood, but these are different nutrient lines basically. And they're all wearing these blue coats with a logo on them. So Lincoln asked the guy next to him, "Do you ever get bored doing this?" And the guy goes, "I never really thought about it." Lincoln says, "Where do the tubes go?" And the guy just points. "They start there and they go right there." He has no idea, and none of them do. Which is a perfect analogy for the mainstream. Someone questions the system, and the answer is, "Well, duh, it's obvious." But nobody actually knows where the tubes go. Then they notice this new guy, 7 Foxtrot, and he's in this stupor. They're trying to teach him how to do this job. And one of the clones says, "Man, did we all look that stupid when we went through decontamination?" So it's telling you that every clone goes through this phase. They basically come in blank and slowly get programmed into their role. So now this guy next to Lincoln, and this is interesting. He goes, "Hey, Mr. Man with all the questions, let me ask you this." And he leans in. "The lottery's supposed to be random, right? What if it's not? What if it's rigged?" So this is basically our conspiracy guy, but it's our clueless conspiracy guy. The one that makes alternative researchers look like crackpots. He pulls out this crazy note, and he says that he's been charting the last 20 people who won a spot on the island, excluding of course the women who were picked to be breeders. Okay, whoa. So the film is telling you that some of the female clones are selected for reproduction. And so what he did is he took the first letter of each name and assigned it a point value based on its position in the alphabet. Like the last guy, Starkweather. S equals 15, and then Q equals 15. S equals 19. Do you see what I'm saying? And Lincoln's like, no. But essentially this guy is doing gematria, assigning numerical values to letters and trying to decode a hidden pattern in a 2005 Michael Bay movie. Okay, but this scene's doing multiple things at once. It's showing you how conspiracy theorists work. He has the right instinct. He feels something is wrong. But he looks crazy. His math doesn't add up. He still doesn't have the full picture because he's trying to crack the system to win, not to escape. He almost accidentally cracked the code, but he still believes in the lottery. That's a metaphor. So, then out of nowhere, a woman collapses holding her stomach and everyone rushes over. She's an alpha and she's pregnant. And the moment they realize this, an announcement comes on. Lima, you're going to the island. And then look at Jordan's face. They are genuinely happy for this woman. She hugs her, all the people are applauding. It's a celebration. And then it cuts to Jones in the background going, that's fair, that's real fair. Because basically, a pregnant woman just skipped the line that he was trying to hack. And they all watch her leave like she's won the golden ticket, but nobody knows what's about to happen. Then right after this, people in white hazmat suits come in to clean up the scene, and it's kind of like Monsters Inc., the same energy when they come in and clean up after a human sighting. Kind of weird. Now we're moving on to the next scene, and Lincoln's at a terminal and he calls tech services. I'm down. Computer guy's in Sector 6. Then he gets a contamination kit and says he has to go deal with it. But clearly this is an excuse. And he takes a try key. Then he leaves. This is where we meet Mac, Steve Buscemi. He lives in the back end of the facility, like the maintenance tunnels. This is Sector 6. Lincoln comes to see him because his chip fried again. And Mac's just like, yeah, your chip fried. How much longer do you think that one's gonna work? So he knows this is an excuse. Obviously this is their gig. Realistically, it doesn't make sense. But the signal is, this is a secret meeting. The strange hermit who teaches the beginner the basics of knowledge. So Mac's a supervisor. But he's not like the others. Obviously he's living in basically a cave. And on the walls, there's photos of models, magazine cutouts of women. And Lincoln notices this and says, are these your friends? And Mac goes, yeah, sometimes. Lincoln's like, where's their clothes? But Mac never answers it. So again, you're gonna see these subtle undertones. Sure, on the surface, he could just be a lonely guy with magazines. But think about who this character is. There are no signs that he's a creep in the film. He's actually the most human character, I guess. But he has a catalog of real women on his wall in a facility that makes artificial people. Note that. Then Lincoln asks, what's with Dr. Merrick? Mac tells him that he has a god complex. All doctors are like that. They think they know everything. And Lincoln says, what's God? So the religious symbolism is there. He doesn't know what God is. He's never been taught the concept. And Mac, this mechanic living in the pipes, he goes, well, you know when you want something really bad and you close your eyes and you wish for it? God's the guy that ignores you. So this is an insight. That's his theology. That's how the film defines God for the clones. Through a pessimist in a boiler room. Then Mac tells Lincoln, you know, you have a really sweet deal here. Because you're special. And Lincoln goes, why? Why am I special? But Mac won't tell him. It gets serious though. He says, you don't tell anyone about our conversations, do you? Because that can get me in big trouble. So think about what this scene is really showing you. A supervisor in a classified facility, secretly meeting with a clone, sharing forbidden knowledge, risking his position in the back rooms where nobody can see them. This is a secret society dynamic. It's an Enlightenment reference. The initiated sharing truth with the uninitiated in a hidden chamber. And then as Lincoln is leaving, he sees a butterfly or a moth. It looks more like a moth, but it still holds the same mind-control significance because it is multi-layered. He follows this bug through the corridors through a door marked Warning, Level 3 authorized personnel only, and this is when he catches it. What's happening is, if there's contamination that wiped out the outside world, if nothing can survive out there, Then how's a bug inside the facility? The contamination must be a lie. The bug is a bug in the system. In this case, it's the opposite of the symbol in the Matrix, where the bug is a parasite. In this instance, the bug is a random chance anomaly in the system. But again, it's another enlightenment symbol. He is waking up to the truth. And then as he's walking through the main facility, there's this Department 6, Department of Recreation. I haven't been pointing them all out, but hopefully you've noticed all these 6 and 9s and the inversion of the two. They are all throughout the film. Okay, so now we follow Mac. He walks into a room, and it looks like this is his job. The first thing you see are these 2 monitors. One on the left has the machine's operating software showing all the log data, and the one on the right is a full database of every clone in the system. And right now it's selecting one by ID, and the machine is grabbing that specific pod for the inspection. I'm just saying that had to be designed by a developer. And again, I get that sci-fi movies show this type of stuff all the time, but this is actually quite detailed for a random sci-fi movie that isn't even a series. 2 guards are helping him out, and one of them says, "Man, you'd think with all the money this place is raking in, they could afford decent equipment." So this is a funded operation. It's raking in money. Here's the first close-up of a clone in the pod, and if you see the logo, M for Merrick. So we know this is a corporation. It's called Merrick. Merrick. America. Then they go to work on one of the pods and someone says, "Ready?" And then they just cut it open like a C-section. What comes out is a full-grown adult human being, covered in fluid, gasping for air, and they're like, "Breathe, breathe." It's actually pretty brutal. I mean, think about this compared to being born in the loving arms of your mother. The clone is like a newborn baby, except it's a fully developed adult. Then the doctor comes in and says, "Looks like we have a fine product." So they're like livestock. And this shot's insane. The camera pulls back and you see the full scale of the operation. Dozens, maybe thousands of these pods throughout the entire facility. What's interesting is that they're different stages of development. Some of them are blood vessels, skeletal, or fully formed adults floating in fluid. This is industrial manufacturing of human beings. And they designed this set. Someone had to build this. But if you follow the camera, this is an interesting technique, something only the back-end director would think. The camera follows over the pods and then it goes through the nutrient tubes, the same tubes Lincoln was injecting nutrients into all day at his job in the Department of Labor. But like I said, watch this shot. The camera tracks the tubes from the pod room, through the walls, through the infrastructure, all the way back to the front end, to the workstation, to Jones sitting right there feeding the tubes. So he's been feeding the clones. That's their job, to create more clones. And they have no idea. That doesn't seem like a Michael Bay shot to me. That's a visual metaphor where the camera physically traces a supply chain from the product back to the unknowing worker coming back full circle. So now Lincoln's back in his room, and the moth is in a glass jar on his nightstand, and look at the shot. One-eye symbolism. Okay, now you might think that's a reach, but it's a deliberate composition. The cinematographer framed the bug and the eye together in that same shot, and he says, "little bug." Now think about that. In The Matrix, Neo had a literal bug implanted in him, a parasite, a tracker, the system controlling him. But here, it's reversed. The bug's not a parasite, it's the revealer, a glitch in the system, an accidental life form that got inside the facility, and it's going to lead to the clones waking up. It's a bug in the software. And the way Lincoln is looking at it, the jar's like right in front of his head, like it's inside of his mind, almost a homunculus reference, the genius awakening within him. Then we cut to what the clones do for fun, and this is pretty wild. They play virtual reality games, and it's connected to Xbox. So Lincoln and Jordan are fighting each other in this full body motion tracked virtual reality system, and it's branded Xbox. And who owns Xbox? But notice that their virtual selves experience pain. He spits out a tooth and bleeds a little bit. So even the game system is conditioning them to associate virtual experiences with real physical sensation. Then the clones apparently have nightlife. They actually have a club. So the facility has a lounge, it's got the colored lights and music. Basically the illusion of nightlife so they don't go crazy. It honestly reminds me of Brave New World because it's almost like they're giving them soma. Give them entertainment, keep them pacified. And then we even get an Aquafina ad. It's really random when you're watching the movie too. They come out of nowhere. The camera will just randomly zoom into the Aquafina water bottle. Then they have another eugenics detail here. Lincoln has to drink this dark, sloppy vegetable juice, while Jordan's ordering this beautiful petal juice. It's good for her skin. Remember, she's a Delta, so she has higher privileges. We get another one eye here too. Then Lincoln tells Jordan about the bug. So this is where it falls apart, because Jordan says, but I thought they went extinct with the contamination. And then Lincoln mentions, well, how did they get past the pathogen sensors? And he goes, how does anyone survive? They keep finding people and bringing them here, but where do they come from? Notice how the bug is connected to questioning and becoming more awake. And Jordan pushes back. It's good that they find survivors. Why do you question the good? You only think about the bad. So she's just completely nescient. She believes the system. She's hopeful and positive in a situation where she has no idea what her fate actually is. Lincoln just says, I have a feeling that something is wrong. Again, we see the control room, monitors everywhere. The lottery's back on. It's operating literally like a television production. That's what it is a show, and they have a whole team running it. Good evening, live from EtherCon. EtherCon? So notice how this lottery winning system has a headquarters with their fictional reel called EtherCon. She says, welcome to the lottery spin. It's been a busy week. We had a record 2 winners so far. Tonight's winner will be selected at random for relocation to the island, transported to the world's last paradise. And as she says, transported to the world's last paradise, pay attention, look at the shot that's on the screen. Merrick is watching from above, drinking something, and the drink is red, 100% red, and his face is framed in one-eye symbolism. How else do you explain that? This is during the lottery, during the announcement of who gets transported. The man who runs the slaughterhouse, watching the selection, drinking red with one eye. That one shot alone ties the organ harvesting to sacrificial blood ritual imagery. If you know, you know. The names spin, and it lands on Jordan 2 Delta. Step up, your time has come. You're moving out to the island. And look at this shot. There's hundreds of clones in white, all clapping and celebrating like a congregation, like a church. Jordan can't believe it. She goes to Lincoln and says, I have to go in the morning. And Lincoln says, you were right. Good things do happen. But Lincoln knows that something's not right. And behind him on the ether screens, we see the words, your time. Everyone's celebrating, but he's the only one in the room who feels that something's wrong, but he doesn't know why. They're then separated, and she walks away and says, I'll see you on the island. Lincoln goes to sleep and the dream starts again. But this time it's different. It's more intense. Okay, so I really need you to pay attention because what happens next is one of the most important things in the entire film. And it doesn't seem like anybody's caught it. The dream starts with flashing images, MK Ultra style programming, the island, the doctors, and then buried inside the sequence, frame by frame, single frame inserts that you can't see at normal playback speed. You have to go frame by frame. That means it's subliminal. Okay, here's what's in the sequence. It says obedient, flashes for one frame, then a rising sun, a baby being born, love, the island, stop, an image of contaminated America. So Merrick is America. A beach, the island paradise, lucky. And look at this. Notice the typography. This is that magazine print style. Does that remind you of anything? Remember the incubator victim? And then we get more one-eyed symbolism. And then an abduction scene. Doctors in masks pulling Lincoln from his bed. This is a memory of him being born as a clone, being replayed as a nightmare. You have been chosen. And something interesting. In the dream, Lincoln appears to be in a car with the number 14. Seems like he's some type of celebrity or a driver. A flash of his sponsor's life bleeding through. And then a man in the mirror with black glasses, like a man in black, says, "The island awaits you." Jordan reaches out her hand. "The island awaits you." Lincoln wakes up. Now look at the composition. His head is behind the jar with the bug in it. So it is kind of a homunculus reference. The genius is in his head now. The awakening is happening. That's what the dream sequence is. So those subliminal frames, obedient, love, lucky, you wouldn't be able to see them if you were watching this at normal speed. The clones are programmed by screens in the MK Ultra room, and you, the viewer, just got programmed by the subliminal frames in the movie. So Lincoln still has the tri-key from earlier, and he's sneaking back out to the facility on his own. Now if you think about it, this is kind of a plot hole. How is a clone walking around the facility freely at night? Don't they have cameras? Unless Merrick is allowing it. Unless the system is testing him, letting the bug do its work, seeing how far his curiosity goes before they intervene. So he comes up to the sign, level 3 authorized personnel only, contamination risk. So this is the edge of their world. The story that keeps everything away. If you go past here, you die. The entire foundation of this facility runs on this lie. The outside world is contaminated. No clone could go past this point. Why would you? But Lincoln has the bug. He put the bug in a matchbox, notice the background, and when the moth flies up, this shows that the air isn't toxic, so the contamination is a lie. Okay, but notice the device here. The bug revealed the truth. And this is something that most people would miss, because right after this, there's a ladder going up. Obviously rested because why would anyone go up there? But Lincoln climbs it. Okay, but this is an esoteric layer. This is Jacob's ladder. This is important. In the Bible, Jacob dreams of a ladder connecting earth to heaven, and angels ascend and descend on it. So, Lincoln is ascending, climbing out of the underground false reality toward the truth above. Now that's kind of obvious, but what's not well known is this is a Masonic reference. This is degrees of initiation. You climb the ladder of knowledge. So whoever wrote this script knew exactly what they were doing. He gets to the top and opens a hatch in the ceiling. One eye. This is him entering a higher realm from below. And look at it. The bright white hallways. It's heaven. It does look like that one scene from The Matrix. And that's not an accident, because Lincoln's literally unplugging from the simulation right now. He's seeing the real world for the first time. So he finds some blue scrubs, puts them on as a disguise, and now he's blending in with the staff. Alright, so get ready because this part's very dark. So he comes across a room, and through the window he sees a woman giving birth. It's Lima 2 Alpha, the woman who fell earlier. So this is the woman who was pregnant. She was really pregnant and she just had her baby. She's crying, she's happy. She's so beautiful, I've never seen a baby. Can I hold her? The doctor says, not just yet. Now, look at this shot. Lincoln's in the foreground, smiling, happy. but in the reflection, we can see the doctors holding a green syringe. The audience sees it, but Lincoln doesn't. You know what's coming, and it's pretty disturbing. The nurse, this evil lady holding her baby, and the mother who just gave her birth, putting all her trust in the nurse, says, "Are we going to the island?" She thinks she's won. She had her baby, now she gets to go to paradise. But this other woman, the nurse or attendant, she nods, "Yes, sweetie." But she knows. She's done this thousands of times. She knows exactly what's about to happen, and she just nods and smiles like it's nothing. Then this woman, the same woman who just said "yes, sweetie" while holding her baby, straps her down. Then the doctor injects Lima with the green fluid, one-eye symbolism in this shot too, and Lima starts to realize something's wrong. She gets scared. She realizes she's dying, and the attendant, the woman who comforted her 10 seconds ago, holds her down and watches her die with this cold satanic stare. She's seen this over and over. Soulless. Lincoln just watched all of this, and now remember, the white veil. That dream sequence earlier, Jordan appeared in a white veil, like a bride, like an angel. During the dream, Jordan appeared in a white light veil on the island. The island. And now a white sheet covers her body. The veil is death. It was always death. The white veil in the dreams, the white light at the lottery, the island itself. It's the passage from life to death. Then, the baby's taken, and we cut to the outside world. It's this clean room, and this family's receiving their baby. Congratulations, it's a beautiful girl. And this woman's extremely happy. And then the nurse says, "Whenever you're ready, we have copies of your policy termination for your records." Policy termination? They signed papers for this. This family knows what they bought. The baby is a product, and Lima was the packaging. But did you notice something? I'm not going to point it out right now. I'll save it for later. And immediately after this scene, right after you watched a woman get murdered and her baby stolen, the film cuts to this character, and it's basically Helen from Drake and Josh. Okay, so that's 2 times there are actors from kid shows here. I just don't like the switch up. It's almost insulting. It was just extremely tense. And now this loud, bubbly woman going, "Starkweather? That big, cute football player on the Reebok commercials? Oh, I love him. Is he in there?" It's comedic relief, right after the murder scene. And that's not an accident. That's the film manipulating your emotions the same way the facility manipulates the clones. Give them something horrible, and then distract them with something loud. The film is doing to you what it does to them. Again. Okay, but this scene just keeps getting crazier. So Helen mentions Starkweather, the big celebrity football player, and we cut to the operating room. It's Starkweather 2 Delta. So he's a clone of some famous football player from the Reebok commercials, and they have him on the table for organ harvesting. Take note that the surgery tech in this scene looks way beyond 2005. They have advanced holographic monitors, laser cutters, pretty much the whole thing. So they're doing surgery when Starkweather's heart rate starts rising. Then he starts fighting the ventilator. The doctor says, "I don't want to have to euthanize this guy to get his liver." Then Starkweather wakes up, and this is a big guy. He sees what they're doing to him. They're cutting him open, and he starts destroying everything, ripping tubes out, knocking equipment over. He runs out of the surgery room with this open wound, and they actually shoot hooks into his legs like they're catching livestock. Now this scene's really bad. They pull him back to the surgery room, and the guard's just saying, "Easy, easy, don't damage him." And during all of this, he's screaming at the top of his lungs, "I want to go to the island. You promised. I want to live. I don't want to die." He still believes in this dream. Even while they're dragging him back to have his organs removed, he's begging for the island. The programming is so deep that even in the moment of his own murder, he's asking for the reward he was promised. That's how complete the control is. But what you don't see is that this is extremely traumatizing, not only for Lincoln, but for you, the viewer. That's intentional. So Lincoln's hiding, but a guard in black walks up to him and says, "You okay, buddy? It's not the first time this happened, you know." This happens on the regular. Clones wake up on the table, and they don't even care. He says, "Ethercon, product is secure." Lincoln knows the truth now. He knows everything. The island is death. The lottery is sacrifice. The facility is a farm. He just watched a woman get murdered for her baby and a man get dragged back to surgery screaming for a place that doesn't exist. So, that is a Jacob's Ladder reference. He ascended out of the underground into the truth. He witnessed the reality behind the veil, and now he has to go back down, so he descends the ladder, back down into the material world, back into the Matrix, carrying this new knowledge. That's a Masonic initiation. You ascend, you see the truth, you descend back into the world of the profane, but now you carry the light. The Freemasons literally encoded a degree initiation into a Michael Bay movie. They're not even hiding it. They showed you in 2005, and from their perspective, they're not wrong because they told you. They told all of us. Do you still think the square and compass on the cover is just an accident? So while this is all happening, we cut to the security room. The guards are watching the footage of Starkweather's escape, and they think it's funny. They all know what this place is, and they think it's hilarious. Then Merrick walks in. "Gentlemen, I understand there's been an incident." This is where Merrick realizes that the clone in disguise was Lincoln. We have a product on the loose. So Lincoln's freaking out. He rushes to the female quarters to get Jordan before they find him. So now we're in Jordan's room, and look what's behind her. Now it looks like a window. So wait, the facility's right by the island? They stare at it and constantly dream about going there. So they essentially are constantly reminded of this false illusion. Lincoln finds Jordan and tries to tell her the truth, that Lima and Starkweather are dead, the lottery is a lie, and they're gonna kill her next. Now Jordan doesn't want to hear this, so she shuts him down. She still believes that she's going to the island. But then Lincoln says it, there is no island. So what the scene is that one person sees the truth and is trying to show someone who hasn't, so they reject it. He just learned something that the masses will not accept. They can't fathom the reality that they're in. Then one of the guards says, 6 Echo in female tower, floor 32. Floor 32? No, it's not 33. That would be too obvious. But one below 33? Another subtle Masonic reference. But note that now that someone knows the truth, the facility goes into full lockdown. A contamination alert has been issued for Lincoln 6 Echo. Anyone coming in contact with him will be quarantined. So they weaponize the contamination lie. They're telling you right now how psyops work. You take someone who knows too much, and you tell everyone else that they're dangerous, diseased, contaminated, and now nobody will listen to them. Now Lincoln and Jordan make a run for it. The men in black are chasing them through the facility. They go through door 6 into the Sector 6 basement. Then we get a Michael Bay chase scene. So they escape through a pipe and then they fall into this room. Now this isn't just any room. This is Sector 5, the MK Ultra room, the mind transfer room. This is the stage where the clones are born in the pod room. They're brought here and then their minds are programmed. The memories are implanted and the personalities are constructed. But just look at the scale of it. Notice how they're being programmed. Screens. Screens above every single pod, projecting directly into their eyes, 24 hours a day, and the messages play on repeat. You've been chosen. You have a very special purpose. You're a part of a new beginning. You're special. You want to go to the island. Now even Jordan's starting to wake up. She's starting to remember these exact same phrases. The consciousness research is in the Epstein files. It's the same pipeline. Map the brain, build the model, install the program, control the output. But this film is showing you this in 2005. So the Men in Black catch up, they find them in the MK Ultra room, and they continue with more chasing. They then end up at the edge of the facility. They find a wall, and on the other side of it, they see the sky, the ocean, and the island. And for a second, it looks like the facility is right by the island. But it's a projection. The entire sky is a hologram. So this is an underground lab with a fake holographic sky. So they escape, they go past the power grid and to the underground tunnels, and they eventually climb out of Silo 3. So they've made it to the real world, born again, in America. Now the film cuts back to the facility, and we hear the lottery woman making these announcements. Lincoln 6 Echo remains in quarantine after contamination exposure, and then Jordan 2 Delta was safely transported to her new home on the island. Okay, but both of those are lies. And then we see Jones 3 Echo, Lincoln's friend from earlier, the conspiracy guy, and he's worried because his best friend has been contaminated. But he's also asking questions too. He says to the doctor, "Where do all the tubes go?" And the doctor shuts him down. But the point is that the seeds are spreading. Lincoln questioned first, and now all the people around him are starting to question too. Okay, so this is probably the most important sequence in the film. So listen closely. The next scene is the investor pitch scene. We learn a lot here. Merrick has a partner, and it's obvious they're trying to sell this whole operation to investors. This is insane. So Merrick starts his pitch, and this is where the film finally explains what this company actually does. It's almost like a promotional video playing for the investors. Almost like an orientation video. The human organism, unique in all the universe in its complexity, the product of 3 billion years of evolution. Perfect in every way, except one. Like all machines, it wears out. So that's how they see us, organic machines with expiration dates. Then he says, for centuries, the idea of replenishing the human body has been at the forefront of modern science. Now, I already showed you an example of this. While the dialogue is going on, a specific shot is shown on the screen. Not only is this intentional, but it's a cinematic device. As soon as he says for centuries the idea of replenishing the human body, look at what appears on the screen. A little girl holding a dark bunny. Now she appears multiple times during this scene. But what does this girl have to do with anything? This seems very dark and it looks coded. Let me show you. Look at the flower. That's a hidden pentagram facing down. Then look at the strings. That's XXX. Now you could say this is just a coincidence. Or I could say it's giving me Balenciaga vibes. In 2005, about cloning, connected to the Epstein files. Yeah. Now this happens fast. You would never notice this if you were watching the movie normally. Merrick takes the stage and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next generation of science, the agnate." Do you get it? It's a subtle hint from the esoteric director that this is replacing the old method for immortality. This is called an agnate, not a clone, not a replica, and this is by design. This is their corporate branding for their product. It's an organic frame engineered directly into adulthood to match the client's age. Now think about what he's saying. In the real world, the problem with cloning is you have to wait 20 years for the clone to grow up. So that's not really commercially viable. But in the film, they solved it by creating an organic frame. Basically, the body can be grown at any age instantly. Remember the pod room? They had different stages of growth. Stage 1 is the blood vessels and brain. Then they build the body around it. And by the time it's harvest ready, it's an exact physical replica of the client at the client's current age. Within 12 months, it will be harvest ready, providing a carrier for your baby, a second pair of lungs, fresh skin. A carrier for your baby? Wait, hold up. First off, that has horrible implications. But remember Lima? Remember the woman who just got murdered after giving birth? That's what this means. The real person, or whoever paid for this, didn't want to go through pregnancy, so she had her clone carry the baby, and then the clone was killed after delivery. That happened about 15 minutes ago, and now Merrick's explaining this service with a smile. All genetically indistinguishable from your own, and in compliance with the eugenics laws of 2015. Eugenics laws? Remember, this film came out in 2005, so 2015? Is this projecting a timeline? And then Merrick says, all our agnates are maintained in a persistent vegetative state. They never achieve consciousness. So this is key. In order to sell this product, they have to lie. They never think or suffer, or feel pain, joy, love, hate. It's a product, ladies and gentlemen, in every way that matters. Not human. Okay, but we the viewers know that's a lie, because we just spent the last 50 minutes watching these products laugh, cry, fall in love, ask questions, and fear death. Merrick knows they're conscious. Then Merrick introduces Whitman, his public relations director, the seller. He says, I want to talk about the smartest investment you'll ever make, and I want to tell you how you're going to live 60 to 70 years longer. There it is. They're selling life extension. And if you can extend life by 60 to 70 years with this tech, that means they have the tech for effective immortality. They just aren't saying that out loud. But watch. Now we get introduced to this black French guy called Laurent. Albert Laurent, Black Hawk Security, he arrives by Black Helicopter. So Black Projects. Merrick introduces him as highly recommended by the Defense Department. His men are ex-Delta Force, SEALs. Laurent himself is former GIGN, French Special Forces. My interpretation of this scene is, this is American intelligence and French intelligence working together on a classified project funded by the Defense Department at $120 billion. They're telling you this is Black Projects. Laurent says, I understand you had corporate theft. Merrick says, yes, that's what I told the Defense Department. The reality is a little more complex. So the Defense Department has something to do with this? But listen to what Merrick says here. After several years of trial and error, we discovered that without consciousness, without human experience, emotion, without life, the organs failed. Meaning they tried to make vegetative clones and it didn't work. The organs need a living, feeling, conscious human being attached to them or they deteriorate. The entire business model is built on a lie about consciousness. But pay attention. This scene has another one of those camera metaphors. While Merrick explains all of this to Laurent, the film intercuts with Lincoln and Jordan in the desert. Because think about what's happening right now. You're witnessing certain secrets. During all this, Lincoln and Jordan, the escaped clones, are now in the desert, and there's clearly a cinematic emphasis on showing how dead everything is. This is them leaving the Garden of Eden. Some more biblical references. Okay, but they eventually show up to these ruins. Looks a little strange. There's a shot where he throws a glass bottle in frustration and it shatters. And then in silence they hear a rattlesnake. So the symbolism is, they broke the glass ceiling and encountered the snake of truth. The real world is harsh. They're essentially making a comparison. Is the real world much better than our designed paradise? Yes, it's way better. But they want to program you with that, so they do this multiple times. The clones don't even know what the rattlesnake is. They've never seen an animal out in the wild. Okay, but the occult symbolism here is the rattlesnake is the serpent, but it's inverted. In Genesis, the serpent was the deceiver. Here, the snake is proof that life exists outside and that the contamination is a lie. The real world is dead. The serpent is the truth. This is Gnostic inversion. And while this is going on, Merrick continues his exposition over these desert shots. Keep that in mind. As he's saying this, the clones are now in these ruins, obviously intentional. But it's not just ruins, it's a temple. Listen to what Merrick says. We control them with the memory of a shared event, a global contamination. It keeps them fearful of going outside. Does that remind you of anything? The island is the one thing that gives them hope, gives them purpose. Everything we expose them to, their programs, their cartoons, books, the games they play, are designed to manage aggression and reinforce simple social skills. Do you hear what he's saying? This isn't about clones anymore. This is about the Hollywood propaganda mechanism. That's literally what the media does. That's what the entertainment does. That is what you are watching right now, a program. And the director of this film is telling you that through the mouth of the villain. To avoid obvious complications, they aren't imprinted with an awareness of sex. We find it simpler to eliminate the drive altogether. So they've removed sexuality from the clones entirely. And then Merrick says, in a very real sense, they're like children. Children. The clones are like children. They're educated to a level of a 15-year-old. Okay, but what's crazy is that this connects to the files. There's an EFTA that talks about a robot with childlike intelligence. Okay, but really pay attention here, because this is a detail that unless you're experienced with occult film analysis, most viewers would completely miss this. Now this is two scenes at once, the Intel secret scene and the clones in the ruins of a temple scene. Look at the pillars. This exposition, all of Merrick's dialogue, plays while Lincoln and Jordan are sleeping in the temple. They fall asleep in what looks like a ruined temple. Then the Merrick scenes play. So basically, as this is going on, the full secret of their reality is revealed. Then, Lincoln wakes up with the one-eye symbolism. They're actually really on the nose with it. What this means is, they fell asleep in the temple, and the exposition played as a dream. Then, they woke up with the knowledge that they couldn't have heard. This is temple sleep. In ancient mystery traditions, initiates would sleep in the temple and receive visions and knowledge during the night. The Freemasons literally practice a version of this in their degree ceremonies. And so, it would seem, the director of this film, not Michael Bay, encoded a temple sleep initiation sequence into a Hollywood blockbuster. The audience is the initiate. You went to sleep in the theater, you received knowledge through Merrick's mouth, and now you wake up knowing the truth. You literally just got secretly initiated and didn't know it. So now Lincoln's awake, and a motorcycle drives by on the highway. So we realize that they're near a road, and they find these signs. Route 39, and then we see the matchbox from earlier, the one that held the bug. And it says aces and spades, where Route 39 meets the Tucson skies. So they're in Arizona. Now they have the address, and this matchbox was from Mac, the guy from Sector 6 who handled the pods. So they start heading down this road to find this aces and spades place. Now here's some more cinematic encoding that I feel like most people would think is a reach. It's a foreshadowing element. Now you tell me, you see this palm tree? That's a phallic curve. You think that's a reach? It's essentially suggesting that the next scene is sexually charged. And would you look at that? The two clones walk into a bar that's basically a PG-13 strip club, with more brand advertisements. And yes, I'm pointing this out for a reason. There are many sexually charged elements in this movie connected to the clones. Literally, Jordan is an innocent childlike clone. She gets offered a Jack Daniels and doesn't even know what it is. Remember, these clones have zero awareness of the real world, of alcohol, of social dynamics. And some guy at the bar is already trying to take advantage of her, getting her drunk, asking for her number. She doesn't even understand the concept. The film keeps coding these sexual predator dynamics around Jordan wherever they go in the real world. So they meet up with Buscemi. Buscemi gets mad at this guy hitting on Jordan. They go back to the bathroom, and there's this really weird scene that again is sexually charged. In the next scene, they go to Mac's house. Okay, now this is really weird. One of the first shots of this scene is a life-size hula dancer doll. Okay, take note of that. Then we find out that he has a wife that's way out of his league. Now look, I'm not trying to be mean. Not at all. I just think this is on purpose. I mean, it's Steve Buscemi, guys. I think most of us can agree there's something weird about this. I'm pointing out the trophy wife aspect for a reason. He's like extremely mean to her, and she's so nice. It doesn't make any sense. But there are some subtle signals here that I will break down, but I just want you to notice that. He like owns her. Mac tells her to shut up and sends the wife out for beer, and then sits Lincoln and Jordan down. Lincoln says, "Why do they lie, Mac?" "To keep you from knowing what you are." "What are we?" Mac says, "Man, why do I have to be the guy who tells the kids there's no Santa Claus?" "Okay, look, you're not like me. I mean, you're not human. I mean, you're human, but you're just not real. You're not like a real person, like me. You're clones. You're copies of people out here in the real world. Some hag trophy wife needs new skin for a facelift, or one of them gets sick and they need a new part. They take it from you." Interesting that they actually added trophy wife into the dialogue. Note that. And then Jordan says, "But I have a mother. I remember her. I grew up on a farm. I have a little dog and I have a bike." Mike cuts her off. "Right. No, those are memory imprints. I've seen them. A buddy of mine is a programmer at the Institute. He showed me." Institute? Then he says there's 12 stories. They change around little details, but they're all pretty much the same. So the clones are given 12 fake histories, and they just swap out small details like the color of the bike or the name of the grandmother, but the structure's identical. Every clone thinks that they had a unique childhood, but it's just the same 12 templates recycled over and over. Memory uploading, installed during the MK Ultra room programming. But think about how this relates to the real world. How many histories do we have? How many versions of the same story do we all share? The life you think you had before the contamination? It never happened. So how long have we been alive? Mac tells him that you're Echo generation, so you're 3. Delta means you're 4. 3 years old, 4 years old? Okay, but this is actually a plot hole. We found out earlier that Sarah Jordan's sponsor was in a car accident and needs organs within 48 hours. But Jordan has been alive for 4 years? There are a few more plot holes like this as the story continues, but I started thinking, what if the story wasn't their focus? It's the blueprint in your face that was their focus. They didn't care enough to fix the lore because the lore wasn't the point. The encoding was. Max says, "The whole reason you exist is because everyone wants to live forever. It's the new American dream. And there's people out there that are rich enough to pay anything for it." Lincoln says, "Don't people care that they kill us? That they take parts from us?" That's a shout out. They don't know. They think you're vegetables simmering in a jelly sack. Why do you think Merrick has you stuck in an old military bunker below ground? So the lab is underground, and it's an old military bunker. Underground labs in the desert. Then he makes a strange analogy. Just because people want to eat the burger doesn't mean they want to meet the cow. That's a cattle reference. Your sponsors? They're like high society, rich and famous. Okay, boom, this is a reference to Hollywood. the real power structure, to people who fund these programs in real life. And if the sponsors knew the truth, Merrick would be out of business. Which inverted means if the public knew the truth about what these people actually do, the entire system collapses. Our entire world's framework actually depends on it. Or at least it seems that's what this movie is saying. Lincoln makes a decision. We have to find our sponsors and tell them the truth, the real truth. So I will say there is an element of exposure in this movie. It seems as if they're highlighting all the issues with this reality as well, almost like a warning and a mocking at the same time, strangely. So now Mac decides to help them out. He tells them their sponsors' names, Tom Lincoln and Sarah Jordan. The number in their name is a regional code. 6 Echo means your sponsor lives in LA, so they gotta go out of state. Alright, but this scene is super weird and random, but I would say it's intentional. He brings Jordan into the back room to change some clothes. He says, "Oh no, you're gonna wanna come in here." And then he brings her into this room that's clearly sexually charged. There's lingerie and outfits hanging everywhere. They even have this weird chair and mask. It's clearly been used. And then he starts handing her literally sexual cosplay outfits to put on. Like a maid outfit, a nurse outfit. And then look at this. He literally pulls a bra out of the closet to see if it would fit her. He's imagining her in the clothing. Now, you may think this is a reach, but remember the EFTA about sexy androids with a gorgeous realistic face and mind uploading? So this is what Steve Buscemi does with his wife. He has a private cosplay collection. And then Max says, "These are bags, okay? You put stuff in them. Backpacks for boys, purses for girls. Understand?" But look at the context. They are standing in his sex room and he's speaking to her like she's a 5-year-old. Backpacks for boys, purses for girls. And she even says, "We're not idiots." But listen to what he says. He says, "Well, excuse me, miss, I'm so smart I can't wait to go to the island." So he's mocking her. This scene happens fast, so you really wouldn't notice it. But he holds up lingerie and says, "People don't really wear these on the outside. These are mail order, okay? These stay here. Clones don't wear these." So what is the point of this scene? Think about it. Who is Mac? He's a maintenance guy at an underground cloning facility who somehow has a supermodel wife who's freaky beyond belief, has a sex room, outfits, lingerie everywhere, and now he's speaking to a clone of Scarlett Johansson like she's a child. That's because she is a child who never has seen a bra before. But Mac's wife, that beautiful woman from earlier, who is she? Can we just be real for a second? Buscemi? Really? Okay, so hear me out. This isn't really a part of the analysis. I'd categorize this more as a fan theory. But if correct, it does add more weight to the thesis. And obviously there is some background lore here, but it's just never explained. My theory is, Mac's wife is actually a sex clone. It seems that someone actually wrote that into the script, but they didn't elaborate on it. Now I can't prove that, but I'll let you decide. You want to explain why this woman blindlessly does what Buscemi tells her to do? Again, you can make your own decision there, because that's up for interpretation. But the reason I say that is, well, technically Mac is the good guy here, but we can't just ignore that scene, like what was that? Anyways, then Mac gives Lincoln his credit card. This card's like STEM credits. But then he says this, "I know you're new to this whole human experience and all, but there's one universal truth, and that is, you never give a woman your credit card." So he does have hatred towards women, God, and the whole world in general. I would say that supports my theory. So they get to the train station, and there's a scene where the clones see children for the first time. They've never seen children. No babies except the ones being born for the clients. Mac tells them not to trust anyone and to get on the train to go to LA. But then Laurent's team shows up. The Black Ops security tracked the nanobots, and they're at the train station, and Mac sees them first. Now this is fast, but there's a spiral shot as the gun comes out. Mac gets hit, and he falls over the banister into the glass below. A sacrifice. The man who revealed the secrets, who broke the fourth wall of the facility, who gave the clones their first taste of freedom, gets killed for it. It's the archetype of the whistleblower, the insider who helps you escape, but doesn't make it out himself. So from here, the film basically becomes a different movie. This is all the Bay stuff. The chase sequence, the music, explosions, jet bikes, car crashes, all these building collapses. It's basically Transformers for about 15 minutes. And then it's very clear that this front-end director is doing his thing. But even inside the Bay chaos, there are details worth catching. There's a shot where they sit down on the Amtrak, and the advertisement above them is a Terminix ad. For Bugs, it's the end of the line. Another interesting detail is that the Black Ops team sets up in a van and taps into the entire city camera system. They even have facial recognition image match probability. And the progress bar does show 66% as one of the steps. In 2005, they're showing you AI facial recognition surveillance as a tool of a black project. This is a decade before it was publicly acknowledged. Now just to be clear, the 66 part is a growing percentage, but the fact that they chose 66 as one of the stopping points, I'd ignore it if there weren't several other cases of 6s. And literally the next shot, it's 6th Street. This 6th Street appears multiple times in the film. The clones are chased on 6th Street. Then the truck has a 9 right under the 6. The facility has Sector 6 as the critical area. Department of Recreation is Department 6. And there's another scene where they have this MSN butterfly logo that appears on this AI search terminal. It's basically this booth that Lincoln uses, but it has the monarch butterfly symbol. I don't think that's an accident. And Laurent's team uses fake FBI and SWAT credentials, even fake police IDs for a Black Ops operation run by a private military contractor with Defense Department backing. But there's this really weird plot point. Apparently the actual police show up too, and they don't know what's happening. So the real law enforcement and the shadow enforcement collide, and of course the shadow enforcement wins. Jordan then sees herself on a Calvin Klein billboard. The clone is discovering that her sponsor is a supermodel, which is another weird connection. And then after this insane chase, building signs falling, jet bikes exploding, they survive, and a construction worker looks at them and says, "Wow, Jesus must love you," because they got lucky. But then he looks at Jordan and says, "Come on girl, I know Jesus loves you." Again, sexually charged, inverted symbolism. So the chase ends, they survive, and now we go back to the facility where something else is happening. We see Gandu, who knows about the flying bug. So basically, this information leaked to the other clones. They don't know the full truth yet, but it's clear this one's far too curious. So this clone goes to Merrick to tell him about it, thinking he's being helpful. "Can you keep a secret, Doc? There's something going on around here. Something you may not even know about." He has no idea. He genuinely thinks Merrick doesn't know. He's like a child telling his parent about a monster under the bed, except the parent is the monster. "You know, I'm not sure that the contamination is real." And Merrick plays along. "Why do you think that? Have you told anyone else about this?" No, but I'm gonna do some digging. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this." And then Merrick says, "You were one of the first of the Echo generation. You're very smart." The Echo generation. The clones that are starting to wake up. The clones that remember. And by the way, remember that name Echo? Because it shows up in another series we're going to talk about later. And then Merrick goes full demiurge on this guy. "It's natural, even healthy to question the world we're presented. You might say, it's only human." Only human, and then he injects him. The clone who was curious, who wanted to help, who trusted his creator. gets a needle in the neck mid-sentence. Because now Merrick knows that the Echo generation is aware. He knows curiosity is spreading. And you know what his solution is? Extermination. I mean, the Gnostic pattern is blatantly obvious. They end up making it to LA, and they find the real Tom Lincoln and show up at his house. So this is the real Lincoln. Tom Lincoln is clearly wealthy, and so the clone's walking around, and then the real Tom Lincoln attacks him. So the clone Lincoln tells him that he's his policy. And interestingly, the real Tom is Scottish, meaning a foreign client. And then Tom meets Jordan. Now this is another weird scene. He immediately starts flirting with her. And remember, Jordan likes clone Lincoln, so she's comfortable with his face. So in a way, she's somewhat comfortable with this because it's in her nature to feel something for Lincoln. But notice what's going on here. She does not understand the real Tom Lincoln's intentions. And what does he do? The very first thing, out of nowhere, he says, "Boy, your skin is so soft," and then kisses her hand and strokes her. I mean, you could classify that as assault. And Lincoln's sitting right there. So this Tom Lincoln just met a woman who is a perfect copy of a supermodel, and his immediate response is to touch and kiss her skin. And they play it off like he's being charming, but look at the context. He literally just learned that she is a manufactured being, a product, and he's handling her like he's test driving a car. She's unbelievable. That's what he says to the clone after Jordan goes upstairs. It's clearly sexually charged. And if you want confirmation, he says, "How is it that you've been around for 3 years and you end up with that kind of woman I haven't been able to find my whole life?" The clone says, "She found me. She's my best friend." Watch, he's about to confirm it in a moment. But then Tom shows him the workshop. He designs boats, cars, motorcycles. So he's a designer. And then the clone Lincoln sees the designs and says, "It's weird. I feel like I've seen these before." Because he has. Genetically, the memories are in the DNA. That connects directly to the files. Okay, but pay attention. This is very important. Then he says, "What's renovatio?" Tom tells him, "Renovatio in Latin means rebirth." Latin in a movie about cloning? Why would a Scottish boat designer name his racing yacht a Latin word meaning rebirth? It's not about the plot. It's because the back-end director put it there. That's secret society coding. Renovatio. Take a note. Then Tom says, "Subtle?" No, it's not subtle at all, actually. Meanwhile, at the facility, the scientists are looking at Lincoln's synaptic scans, and what they find breaks their model. This is a synaptic scan we took of 6 Echo 3 years ago, right before we integrated him into the agnate population. Now, this is a synaptic scan from a few days ago. You can see how much the memory's grown. It's like he's experienced 30 years, not 3, which is obviously impossible. The doctor tries to explain it away. Or maybe this is scarring from a cortical infection. And then Merrick shuts him down. An infection can't teach you Latin or how to fly. These are memories, but they're not his. They belong to his sponsor. So this is genetic memory. The clone is downloading the sponsor's life through DNA. And they even mention Johns Hopkins. They'll be back from the Johns Hopkins neuro, and then Merrick cuts him off. But it seems like that was a real institution name dropped in a movie about secret cloning. Either lazy writing or it's deliberate. Given everything else, I think we know which one it is. Okay, so back to Tom Lincoln's house. And like I said, if you were doubtful about the sexually charged nature of this whole arrangement here, this is your answer. Tom Lincoln tells the clone that he has cirrhotic hepatitis. That's a liver disease. And when the clone doesn't understand, Tom explains it. A partying gift from God for all my philandering. The clone doesn't get it. So Tom just tells him, lots and lots of sex. That's what destroyed his liver. That's why he needs a replacement organ. That is why the clone exists. This is a metaphor for being able to sin without consequences. And then pay attention. The real Tom says, you're a virgin? Now this isn't clear, okay, in the movie, but think about it. So you have your genetic copy walking around with Scarlett Johansson's clone. So Tom is realizing that his clone is a virgin. But the way he says it, you're kicking around her and you're a virgin? You see, the immediate implication is, why haven't you had sex with her? Because he would have. This is a predator's instinct. But the subtle undertone is the possible implication that he's realizing Jordan is a virgin. That would support my theory. The clone doesn't even know what sex is. He barely knows what a credit card is. But Tom Lincoln, the real version, his first and only thought about Jordan is sexual. And Tom tells Jordan that she's in Maxim. Pictures of women with little tight shorts, stories too. So she's a Maxim model. And then the president comes on TV. A hurricane is hitting Florida. Presidential address. But Lincoln, the clone, looks at the screen and says, "Is that your community announcer? I know that guy." Tom says, "He's the president of America." But Lincoln says, "He has a clone." Again, some more background lore that they never really explain. So the president has a clone in the facility, but where is he? I believe he's referring to the MK Ultra handler in the dream sequence, because that's the only person that resembles the president that he could be talking about. This is actually another Easter egg that we'll talk about in a moment. But Lincoln wants to go on TV and tell the truth. If we can get on there together, people will see us and they'll know the truth. But Tom tells him, "So you think that we're just gonna waltz down to NBC and see if they can slot us in after the weather? But who would believe it? I'm looking at you in the face and I don't believe it." They literally don't even think that you would believe it. Lincoln says, "There are thousands of us. Everyone we've ever known is gonna die in that place." And so Tom smiles and says, "All right, let me get my shoes." But he's lying through his teeth. And Jordan knows this. Tom then calls Merrick Biotech. And this is another audience proxy moment. Tom Lincoln is a representation of us. He's the person who gets to see the truth, has the power to act, and chooses comfort instead. He's every person who reads the EFTA files and then just goes back to scrolling. He's every viewer of this video who will deny it or forget it. The film is asking you, are you Tom Lincoln or are you Lincoln Six Echo? So Tom Lincoln betrays them, and he's playing it cool, but Jordan sees through it immediately. So Tom and Lincoln get in his car, it's a V12 Cadillac, and he activates it with his fingerprint. You're worth every penny. We even have the same fingerprints. Okay, but then we get this long chase scene. But interestingly, the final confrontation between the two Lincolns happens inside this building that has these pillars and an angel statue in the center. Obviously not an accident. This is another temple. It clearly has Masonic influence, and this whole scene happens with a fallen angel. This is the doppelganger scene. Laurent doesn't know who the real clone is, so he has a decision to make. The same decision the audience has been making throughout the entire film. Which one is real, and which one is fiction? Okay, but Laurent shoots the one with the collar. He actually shoots the real Tom Lincoln, and the clone walks away. Meaning, the clone is the real, better version. He outsmarted the original and Laurent. Or did he? Look at what just happened plot-wise. A clone just tricked a Black Ops mercenary into killing his own client. So then why would Laurent just let him walk? Clearly he was confused for a second, so it definitely crossed his mind that this was a possibility. Why wouldn't Laurent arrest him, investigate, call Merrick? Because the plot doesn't matter. The blueprint is the priority. So pay attention to this next scene. The initiation is closing, and it will break its own logic to get there. Here it is, the moment the film shows you what it really is. So they're standing inside this old world building with columns, and this isn't just any building. Remember, this is supposed to be a futuristic LA. So why did they choose this building? This isn't a futuristic building. This building isn't in LA. Do you know what this building is? This is insane. Guys, this is Michigan Central Station. This structure is a major red flag. Let me show you one of the oldest photos of this building. What do you notice? Anything weird? If you think this looks normal, you might need to get your eyes checked. This is a massive 18-story Beaux Arts tower looming over a rail yard with trains everywhere. They called it the gateway of the city. Okay, yeah, but why is this place completely empty? Can we just be real? First off, this is a painting. Probably to hide this front area right here. Now, historic Detroit has a whole gallery of construction photos. Of course they do. They need a backstory. But let's look at what they actually have. They have 18 photos. 10 of them are railroad infrastructure, tunnels, dirt, excavation equipment, not the building. The ones that are supposedly of the building going up, most of those are just holes in the ground, footings, foundations. The actual 18-story tower, the walls, the facade, 8 million bricks being laid, you get maybe 2 or 3 photos. And those are the lowest quality images in the whole set. Everything else is crisp, detailed photography. This is 1910. But the moment it's time to show the tallest railroad station in the world going up brick by brick. Blurry, low resolution, different style, clear signs of photo manipulation. Look, obviously I can't prove without a shadow of a doubt that they're fake photos. But you need to be aware that that was completely possible during this era. Regardless, it's blatantly clear that the photographic record does not match the claim. And if the photos aren't enough to prove it, let's just look at the story itself. They say that they built this in 3 years, 1912 steel framework, opened by Christmas 1913. 8 million bricks, 125,000 cubic feet of stone, 7,000 tons of structural steel, 20,000 cubic yards of concrete for a train station in an empty field, with 68-foot Corinthian columns modeled after ancient Roman baths on the inside. An architectural critic at the time suggested that it was essentially 2 different buildings jammed together, like one of them was already there. Grand Central Terminal took 10 years to build, and that was in the middle of Manhattan with unlimited money. This thing supposedly went up in 3 years in Corktown, Detroit, surrounded by wooden shacks. I know this seems random, but there's a reason that I'm going into this, so pay attention. They'll tell you that there was a building before this, the old Michigan Central Depot, built 1884, Romanesque revival, clock tower, turrets. I mean, it kind of looks like a medieval castle. And on December 26, 1913, 9 days before the new station is supposed to officially open, the old depot catches fire, and it starts in the records room. The record room on the 3rd floor. That means every document, every financial record, every paper about the railroad's history would be gone because of the fire that was undetermined. And if you look at the damage photos, it literally looks like an explosion. So a fire that started with paper in one room does not do that. A fire doesn't bring down a 1,000-ton stone clock tower and leave the brick walls standing. That looks like something else. You tell me. Basically, this is a historical cover-up tactic. When you hear that the old station burned down, what does your brain do? You assume the same location. The old one burns down, the new one goes up on the same spot. That makes sense, right? Meaning this is a backstory narrative, a device used to make the story more convincing. Guys, basically what I'm saying is this is a reset building. Most likely a mass reset repopulation center where people were trafficked en masse. Do your own research on the orphan trains. So yes, I needed to explain that, Because now think of the context. They're inside an old world reset building with Masonic influence. And right after Laurent shoots the wrong person, the real Tom Lincoln, the Lincoln clone, who remember is a proxy for the audience, him and Laurent are outside the Michigan Central Union. And look at the shot. This is key, so listen. This clone Lincoln, which is us, the audience, just watched this entire operation. We saw the back end reality. The clones, the harvesting, the murder, the deception. Okay, but go watch the movie and listen to this scene. Listen to what he says right here. Laurent turns to Lincoln and says, "You've been witness to certain trade secrets." Trade secrets? You mean that they manufacture human beings who walk, talk, and feel? That kind of secret? Laurent says, "Have you talked with anyone else about this?" And remember, the Lincoln clone is mimicking Tom Lincoln. He says, "Who would believe it?" And then Laurent says, "Can I count on that?" The only thing you can count on is that people will do anything to survive. I just want to live, and I don't care how. This isn't a plot scene. This is the audience initiation closing, the Masonic obligation of secrecy. You just sat through 2 hours in the dark, you received the knowledge, you watched the ritual, and now the film is telling you directly, through Laurent, keep this a secret. Who would believe you anyways? And like I just said, the building they're standing in front of is a reset repopulation building. You just completed the degree, and you didn't even know it was happening. There's no denying the Masonic elements. And right after this, what happens? The clones have sex, for the first time, both virgins. And then they say, "The island is real." Lincoln looks at her confused. "It's us." Now we're back at the facility. Merrick is walking through the programming room with his team and he's worried. The Echo generation's waking up. It's not just Lincoln, they are all becoming curious. We're seeing the same neural patterns in all the Echoes, plus every subsequent generation, the Foxtrots, Gammas, and Halos. We predicted our entire system on predictability. 6 Echo has displayed the one trait that undermines it: human curiosity. Human curiosity is the one thing they didn't plan for, the one thing they couldn't program out, the same thing that drove Lincoln to catch the bug, to sneak through the vents, to question why the sky looks funny. Curiosity breaks the system. So now we're facing 4 generations with the potential for defiant behavior. What are you suggesting? A recall. Wait, you mean dispose of over $200 million worth of product? Yes. $200 million of people. And how do they plan to do this? A reset. Mass winnings. Everyone's going to the island today. The clones are excited, hugging each other, celebrating. They think they all won. They're all about to go to paradise. They're going through a reset. What's crazy is they actually planned for this. They already had a mechanism in place. So, this is what happens when the population trusts the system so completely that they applaud their own destruction? Familiar? Merrick is explaining this, and it's intercutting with the mass lottery. And then our guy Jones gets called. He's finally won. Now we get the final confession. Remember, there was somewhat of an implication that Laurent actually decided to kill the real Tom. Now we somewhat get an answer. So Laurent has completed his mission. He's in Merrick's office to collect his check. And so while Merrick is dealing with this whole reset situation, he's standing next to this Picasso painting. Now this painting is a woman fragmented into geometric planes. Essentially, it's a portrait that hangs on the wall of a man who fragments women for parts. Merrick even has a line on this, because whoever wrote this is just too on the nose. He says, "Do you like Picasso, Mr. Laurent?" But he never answers. This scene has to do with Jordan. Basically, Laurent has captured the clone Jordan. And so he's brought her back to Merrick, and Merrick's telling him that you took too long to bring her back. So he says, "The girl I brought in, you're going to harvest her, kill her anyway, even though it won't make any difference?" Merrick says, That's the privilege our clients pay for, Mr. Laurent. So some clones don't even get used. But basically you realize that Laurent, someone inside the system, he's a man who has killed in wars and done things that he's not proud of. He's starting to ask questions. When did killing become a business for you? And listen, Merrick says, it's so much more than that. I have discovered the holy grail of science. Mr. Laurent, I give life. The agnates, they're simply tools, instruments. They have no souls. The possibilities are endless here. In 2 years' time, I will be able to cure children's leukemia. How many people on Earth can say that, Mr. Laurent? Laurent says, I guess just you and God. That's literally what he believes. He controls life. He destroys life. The demiurge, the false creator who believes he is supreme and who punishes his creation for the crime of being conscious. And now he's ready to destroy his creation. Another Gnostic parable. And later, when Lincoln returns to the facility to save everyone, Merrick catches him and says the final line, I brought you into this world, and I can take you out of it. This is basically God versus Lucifer. It's the demiurge telling the light bearer, you exist because I allow it, and you will die because I decide it. Again, too on the nose, it's just Milton's Paradise Lost in a lab coat. But this exposes the whole thing. Why is Milton's framework in a futuristic sci-fi cloning movie? It doesn't make any sense, unless you know the history of secret societies in literature. And then Lincoln, which I just revealed is Lucifer, 6 Echo. That's not the devil, that's not demonic. This is hero enlightenment symbolism. Lincoln, the savior, goes back. Not to escape, not to save himself. He already had Tom Lincoln's life, his house, his car. He could have just disappeared. Laurent even says it. He says you could have taken over his life, but you chose to come back. You truly are unique, 6 Echo. And then he says, my name is Lincoln. You see, they're praising him. Clear Luciferian symbolism, and I'm not claiming anything other than that. It is what it is. You can make your own conclusions. Lucifer is 7 letters. Lincoln, 7 letters. Can we wake up, guys? Enough is enough. I know most of you watching this are already fully aware of this, but it's time for the masses to wake up to this. Remember, Jones told us everything was coded. It's naked for you to see. Lincoln is being worshipped for rebelling against his creator, bringing forbidden knowledge to the other clones, and declaring his own name over the one the system gave him. That's just the start. Like I told you, by the end of this video, it will be undeniable. But yeah, to finish up the movie real quick. Like I was saying, this scene ends with the creator versus Lucifer, where Merrick is a proxy for God. But there's a shot here where it ends with him being hanged. That's more occult symbolism. It's the hanged man, but it's also bringing God down. Then, Lincoln goes back to shut down the hologram, the wall that projects the outside world lie. And I didn't mention this, but there's this other shot where Jordan leads the lottery winners away from the execution chamber who were about to get incinerated, which is another really messed up part about this movie, because all the clones trusted the security guards. The fact that they even put that in the movie is pretty crazy. So then, they make their way out of the underground lab, and for the first time in their lives, they see the actual sky. They're free, and the hero Lincoln has released them from their prison, the Garden of Eden. Good ending, right? It looks like it. But just wait. So let's do a quick review. We found a film about human cloning, organ harvesting, and consciousness transfer that's structurally built on Gnostic inversion. The entire cosmology is flipped. God's the villain, Lucifer's the hero, paradise is a prison, and salvation is death. There's one-eye symbolism encoded pretty much in every major scene. There's 6s everywhere. That is important to note. And we also found Masonic-influenced architecture chosen specifically for the most important scene in the film. And you saw how the film was a secret society initiation ritual in disguise, where the audience is told to keep the secret. But we know now. Lincoln, 7 letters, the same as Lucifer. being worshipped for rebelling against the creator. This is not a movie. This is a blueprint. But the question is, a blueprint for what? Because in 2005, this was science fiction. In 2026, it's not. So weird, right? I think we can agree that the MK Ultra stuff is a bit much, especially with all the fast flashing subliminal frames that do to the audience what the facility does to the clones. Honestly, at this point, if you still think this is a Michael Bay movie, I don't know what to tell you. But I do just want to emphasize, we showed that this film, a $126 million DreamWorks production starring Scarlett Johansson, is encoding a cloning narrative inside a Masonic degree structure. You saw it. I didn't even have to explain it because it was right in front of you. Okay, but one more thing. So you remember one of the first images in the film, before Lincoln wakes up? There's a dream sequence, and there's actually a still frame. It's very fast. It's a blue butterfly. A blue morpho butterfly is in his dream. It flashes so fast you cannot see it if you're watching it normally. I found it because I went frame by frame. There is no explanation for this in the plot. It just appears. Yes, it's inverted, but it appears blue on the screen. Okay, in MK Ultra research, there's a subprogram called Monarch, named after the monarch butterfly. The idea is the butterfly represents transformation, the shattering of one identity and the emergence of another. That's literally what the facility does to the clones. The subliminal screens, the programming. The butterfly is the program. Okay, but here's what nobody's connected. The Butterfly Trust. EFTA 01374954, EFTA 01282041, EFTA 01472231. This was a real financial entity, and apparently it was created in 2013. And according to New York state regulators who investigated it, the Butterfly Trust was the primary vehicle Epstein used to facilitate trafficking. Over 120 wires transferred totaling $2.65 million between 2014 and 2018. Payments sent to women with Eastern European surnames, labeled as hotel expenses, tuition, and rent. The trust executors were later accused of hiding $13 million in assets from victims. So it would seem Epstein's trafficking payment system was called the Butterfly Trust. And the island opens with a butterfly in a dream about programming. Now I'll let you come to your own conclusions. All I'm saying is it seems the symbolism is the same here, and they both point to a similar operation. But here's where it gets worse. Because everything I just showed you, it didn't start in 2005. If you really think what I just showed you was a coincidence, that the island just had that level of encoding because the filmmaker was being creative or something. If you think that, pay attention. I'm about to show you, it's not a pattern. It's not me reading into things, it's undeniable. By the end, you'll understand. This is how the entire system operates. And they've been telling you the whole time. Okay, so here's something they don't want you to know. The island, this $126 million DreamWorks blockbuster, was stolen supposedly. DreamWorks paid millions to settle the lawsuit. The original is a 1979 film called Parts, The Clonus Horror, directed by a guy named Robert S. Fiveson. Now let me talk about this guy because he's important. So this Fiveson guy is interesting. He went to USC Film School, his thesis film got picked up by Universal Studios, then he worked on a show called In Search Of. Then, the same year, he started shooting Clonus. Then he makes this one film, Parts, The Clonus Horror, one feature film, and then he goes to work for the United States Air Force Media Center at March Air Force Base and produced 500 programs for the Department of Defense over the next 6 years. The Department of Defense? Then the Library of Congress, then A&E, and then Discovery Channel. So one film about a secret government cloning program protected by intelligence networks, then this guy goes to the Pentagon. But he goes deeper. The screenplay was born in a class taught by Irwin Blacker at USC. And Irwin Blacker, He wrote espionage novels about a fictional spy master running an intelligence organization called GNOBS. He also taught George Lucas. The producer, Merle Schreibman, was mentioned by Jack Arnold, a World War II Army Signal Corps filmmaker who made State Department documentaries before becoming Universal's king of science fiction. Schreibman later made a film called Angel of Heat about a female secret agent fighting a mad scientist with an army of androids. Okay, but before I walk you through this film, you have to understand that on paper, it's described as a $257,000 budget B movie. That's what they said. But for a B movie, how did it get Peter Graves, Mission Impossible for 7 seasons? How did it get Keenan Wynn from Dr. Strangelove, Frank Ashmore, who played an intelligence double agent, and V. Dick Sargent from Bewitched, who attended San Rafael Military Academy? Eileen Dietz, the subliminal demon face from The Exorcist, literally the face of Pazuzu. Eugene Robert Glazer, who later played the head of intelligence in La Femme Nikita. Basically, every single one of them has intelligence, military, or occult horror in their filmography. And how does a $257,000 budget film accurately describe nuclear transfer cloning 17 years before Dolly the Sheep? There's something weird about it. That's all I'm saying. So the film itself was screened at Paramount Pictures, and the man who watched it was Jeffrey Katzenberg, VP of Feature Production at Paramount at the time. His direct quote from court filings, "If you can make that for under $1 million, I'd like to see what you can do with 10. 25 years later, Katzenberg's company, DreamWorks, released The Island, $126 million budget. But they were sued. 90 documented points of similarity. DreamWorks settled for 7 figures, and the terms were sealed. Okay, so let's talk about this film, because honestly it exposes a lot about The Island. Every single one of these films I'd classify as a MK Ultra film. You'll understand by the end. But literally, remember how The Island started? What did The Island start with? A MK Ultra dream sequence. Well, Clonus starts with the same thing. We're in a lab with this surreal MK Ultra sequence in audio form. It's some type of strange whispering mixed with binaural panning. What's weird is this doesn't actually connect to the plot in any way. So why are they showing this? Why are the clones being programmed with binaural audio patterns? Remember this, because towards the end you'll see there's really only one answer. Okay, so this MK Ultra sequence in the beginning is being shown while intercutting with a political campaign rally. A silver-haired politician is giving a speech, and it's Peter Graves. The guy who played America's most famous spy is now playing a senator running for president. But notice his name, Knight for president. Take note of that. And then it cuts to something different. It looks like a college campus, young people in white uniforms jogging, stretching by the pool, attending classes. They're living under constant surveillance by guides in black suits. So again, men in black. So we meet George, and George has been told he's qualified. He gets to go to America. So wait, America is their island. That proves it. Dr. Merrick is America. In the island, the clones dream of going to a tropical paradise. In Clonus, the clones dream of going to America. And the first clone we see go through this process is called George. George going to America? George, Lincoln, do you get it? George Washington, literally the most famous Freemason, and Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln freed the people, exactly what Lincoln Six Echo did. Before they send him off, the doctors assess him. George is quite strong. I see no problems here. So they throw George a going away party. Cake, speeches, and everyone's happy. And then George stands up and gives his farewell speech. It's good to know that I have all of you as friends. And I know that soon, all of you will be joining me in America. That is the land where good friends live, where we're always happy. But look at the cake. It looks tropical, like a shore. An island, you could say. And notice the red drinks. That's not an accident. this is a funeral sacrifice disguised as a celebration. In the island, the selection is the lottery. In Clonus, it's all by design. They are chosen when the time comes. And then George is taken into the building, the entranceway to America. The doctor sits him down, gives him a drink, and says, "I want you to play a game," treating him like a child. Start counting backwards from 100. And so he starts counting down, 100, 99, 98, and then he falls. They drugged him, and now his body's being used for parts. That's America. That's what was waiting. So it looks like they drain his blood, replace it with preservation fluid, and the language is clinical. Standard procedure, transference, start the pump. George is being processed like meat at a slaughterhouse. And then his body is sealed in a transparent plastic bag and then placed in a cryogenic storage alongside rows of other frozen clones. So this is America. Right after they bag him, the lead director of this operation, called Jameson, that's pretty close to 5 cent, right? Notice the same amount of letters. Well, Jameson picks up the red phone, behind him on the wall, the America Corporation logo. Everything is going normally. Well done, and he's very grateful. The red phone, that's the Cold War hotline concept. A direct, secure line to whoever runs the operation. So the compound is being handled from the top. But who is this man behind the phone? And there are a few things to note. The whole thing is scored with a church choir, which makes the entire film feel like a ritual. It doesn't feel B-movie to me, it's actually a very surreal film. I'll point it out, but there's some very strange things happening with the camera. That's another clue. So while all the other clones are doing their bike exercises, riding in sync, we get this scene where we're following one of the clones relaxing in nature. Then, out of nowhere, a woman in red falls off her bike from above. And this guy, Richard, played by Tim Donnelly, he goes over and helps her up. It's a fallen angel. It's a mix between Lilith and Sophia. The feminine wisdom that initiates the journey. It's always the woman that triggers it. Okay, but in Clonus, her name is Lena. Lena. Backwards, that's Anel. If you add a G, that's Angel. She points at his ear and says, "Your ear is just like mine." They have these little ear clips. They're tracking devices, but they're color-coded. And Richard notices that she's the only other one with a matching ear clip. Immediately this gets flagged. The security calls it in. 2 controls accidentally met on rural Sector 6. Sector 6? I told you, nothing's by accident. Oh, and by the way, Richard, Lincoln, they both have 7 letters. Remember what Jones said about the counting? Richard is our rebel. The scientists say, separate them as quickly as possible. Identify for future deprogramming. Because Richard and Lena are basically Lincoln and Jordan. But here, they aren't normal clones. They're controls. The ones without cognitive suppression. I'll explain that in a moment. So in this plot, we actually get an explanation for these random events and why some clones can just wander off. They allow it. Dr. Jameson comes in and overrides the separation order. Cancel that. We will monitor their interaction. This could prove to be interesting. The scientists want to see what happens. So see, I called this plot hole out in the island. Was Merrick allowing Lincoln to wake up? The plot hole exists because they're working in a template, and the template is more important. But yes, right after he meets this woman in red who fell, now all of a sudden, he's asking these questions. He's waking up. He's eating lunch and he says, "Today a guy was driving towards me, and he drove all the way around me just so I could not see what he was carrying." And his friends shrug it off. Who knows? Eat. They can't even form the question why, but Richard can. Okay, so here's the distinction. Is this just for organ harvesting? Or is this a data collection experiment? Because it seems like they're studying these people. So Richard is out in nature again thinking, and he finds a beer can floating in the river. Basically, this is the bug from the island, a piece of trash from the outside world that got through the water system. This is the start of his initiation, and he brings it to class. Dr. Jameson, I found something today that I think might be from America. Jameson confiscates it immediately and gives it to one of the guides. Find out how this got through the water valves and who was in charge of cleanup. Okay, but this is insane. The clones have a confessional booth, like a Catholic confessional. They go in and confess their doubts, and they ask questions. But this is an early depiction of an AI chat with a voice from 1979, and it's all being logged for the experiment. Not only that, it's filtered. So Richard goes and asks about this beer can, which says Milwaukee. That's the brewery name. But the AI voice on the other side invents an answer. There's a rare kind of mineral called Milwaukee. It can only be found in certain parts of the river. So it's lying and making up a narrative. It's an AI confessional being used as a surveillance tool. But they actually call it confession, which implies they have some sort of religious cult-like structure. Jameson even looks like a cult leader when he's talking about the lessons. The clones do confession in an AI booth, and then they have blind faith in America as their heaven. That's the point of the scene. Richard is challenging everything they know. Later that night, Richard drops a note into Lena's bike basket while she's riding, asking her to meet him. So they sneak out after dark, and they're sitting in front of a fire. A fire? Prometheus, forbidden knowledge, and Lena tells him she's a writer. She writes her thoughts and ideas, and she tells him about her previous lover. His name was Adam, and he disappeared. So there you go. More Lilith mixed with Sophia wisdom symbolism. And then the fire leads to sex. Fire, enlightenment, then sex. And there's even a camera metaphor here. The sex scene ends with the focus shifting from the foreground to the fire. They pull you away from the physical act to put your eyes on the flame. Passion, Prometheus. Okay, but then the obvious thought is, so how are these two clones just sneaking out and having sex? Nobody stopped them? Nobody noticed? We then cut to the lab. Jameson and a senator are sitting in front of monitors, watching. They just saw the whole thing. This is literally the cabin in the woods. Elites in a control room watching subjects that think they're living freely. The lab just watched them have sex, recorded it, they let it happen. And then Jameson turns to the senator and says, I assure you, Senator, their meeting was planned by us. So he's spinning this. Richard finding Lena wasn't planned. So he's lying to the client because what matters is that the senator believes they have total control. Nothing happens by accident. Take note of this for later. And another thing, this is crazy. He explains this virus. A virus is dropped into the original clone cell at the time of its inception, which causes its mental abilities to be impaired. So that's how they keep the clones dumb? A virus in the cell from day one. But listen, the controls, Richard and Lena, they don't have the virus. That's why they can think. Everyone else has it. The controls are allowed to develop normally as a part of the experiment. But what's insane is the senator says, so you're creating Frankensteins here. Jameson says, oh no, not at all. It's all very step-by-step, standardized, practical. And then the senator says, can we hear what they're saying? Think about that. A sitting senator is watching two clones have sex on a surveillance monitor and asking to turn the audio off. And Jameson's assistant tries to get the audio working, but it glitches. The system bugs out. The assistant tries to make it seem like it's nothing. They want to give this politician the impression of total control. But the truth is, they don't have everything under control. The system has bugs. They can't control anomalies. So Jameson's assistant distracts him. Senator, I think you'd like to see where we preserve them. So why are politicians involved? At what level is this funded? And then Lena tells Richard something else. When she was young, she saw a body, frozen. She went to the confessional and asked about it, but the voice lied and said that he was sleeping. And she never really forgot about it. Deep down, she knows that's a lie. So Lena is the Enlightenment figure, or the figure that leads to his path of enlightenment. And think about what she said, when she was young. So these clones are grown from childhood. They're not manufactured as adults like in the island. Think about it. They grow up here, whole lives, from kids to adults, educated, socialized, all of it, just to be harvested at the end. That makes it so much worse. The next scene, Richard deliberately loses a race because he doesn't really feel like trying anymore. The guards notice this and tell him, I'm gonna have to report this. And Richard's like, to who? And then they say, I will have to report that too. So he's becoming too smart, and the system has noticed. Dr. Jameson tells Richard that he's been accelerated. He's going to America early. They're killing him ahead of schedule because he's asking too many questions. Richard meets up with Lena and tells her, we're being watched. I tried a test last night. I pretended I was sick when no one was around, and medics arrived within minutes. We're being watched. So he basically outsmarted the system. And then he says, I didn't get any answers from the confessional. I think the only place I'm going to find my answers is in America. And I'm going to try to get there tonight. Then Lena says, but Richard, you're not qualified. But Richard, the hero, I have to go. I've got to find out for you and me and for everyone else. Next, Richard breaks into this restricted area at night. This is basically the scene where Lincoln climbs the ladder and enters the real world. Well, Richard sneaks into a forbidden area and he finds files, records, a map of the United States with Milwaukee on it. He finds clone profiles with ID numbers in every single person's logged and monitored. This is the old-fashioned way. Notebooks and filing cabinets. It's the same as the futuristic database from the island, but just old 1970s record keeping. Which means this system could have existed with old world technology going back decades. And then we find out. Richard Knight, cloned, 1948, December. Normal cloning procedure without complications. Clone selected for control group. And a birth date, 1922, for the original Professor Richard Knight. Knight. The same last name as the senator running for president at the beginning of the film. And remember what I showed you in the island. The president has a clone. It's the same template. Knight for president. Richard Knight, cloned 1948. But the crazy part is, he finds an orientation tape, a video cassette. Listen. The tape starts with basic biology. Each cell in the body has 2 sets of chromosomes. It is these chromosomes, one set from each parent, that determine who and how we are. They are our genetic roadmaps. And then it shows sperm and egg cells on the screen, the process of reproduction. And then it says this. In 1931, we successfully removed the nucleus of a female egg cell. And it shows a recording of this procedure on screen. And then they explain it. They took the empty egg cell and replaced the nucleus with an artificial one that has the original set of chromosomes from each parent. So all they need is your DNA. Are you listening? They literally just need your DNA. It's telling you. Once they have the original set of chromosomes, they take any female egg cell, swap in the new nucleus, and stimulate it to divide. They're stimulating the original union of sperm and egg, but bypassing the entire natural process. That's cloning, and the tape says they had this technology since 1931. So where did this lore come from? Then the tape says, armed with this technology and unlimited funding, we established Clonus. And it shows the campus, the facility, and it calls it a breeder facility for clones. Each clone is a unique duplicate of a counterpart, either domestic or international. They're using the word counterpart on purpose to obscure what they're actually talking about. These are copies of real people, clients. And then the tape gets to the problem. One of the most serious problems was the suppression of individuality. So the clones were thinking. They were developing personalities. The solution? Simple lobotomy could make the clone benign and cooperative. Then, in the film, this guy just stares and smiles. The tape cuts off right as it says, further research has led to techniques. But wait, what techniques? Basically, it's implied that there were new techniques to make the clones cooperative, but Richard has to stop it because he hears someone coming. He takes the tape and runs away. Also note the similar hall scene. So just to pause for a second, this orientation tape is interesting. The date they give is 1931. The real date for Hans Speymann's nuclear transfer experiments is 1928, 3 years off. In 1979, 17 years before Dolly the Sheep, this film is accurately describing the nuclear transfer cloning process. Sperm, egg, nucleus removal, chromosome replacement, stimulated division. That's not science fiction. That's someone who knew the actual science. And unlimited funding in a 1979 B-movie? And keep in mind, the suppression of individuality through lobotomy, that's not an accident. It's multi-layered and you will see it again. It's MK Ultra, but it's also the erasure of consciousness. The CIA's documented method for creating controllable subjects. And then Richard finds the storage room, clones in storage, and his friend George, the one who had a going away party. He knows the truth. The America they were told is a lie. They're all going to die. Richard takes the tape, the evidence, and escapes through the elevator. And then out the ceiling hatch through chute number 7. You see the similarities? Mr. Walker, a clone has escaped. And then Richard makes his way to the real world. It's the same thing. He goes through a desert-like landscape and then ends up in the harsh reality of the real world. Also, while he's downtown, there's a shot where he passes an XXX theater. A retired journalist finds Richard after he fell from running from the guards who are chasing and trying to capture him. The guards know where they are because those ear clips the clones wear are GPS trackers. So in 1979, they're showing you location tracking on human subjects. And the journalist's wife, this is a pretty huge detail that's thrown out kinda casually. You would definitely miss it if you weren't paying attention. She casually mentions she was reading in the digest about frogs and cloning, but they never really explain it. She's actually referencing a real article. In the 1960s, John Gurdon cloned tadpoles using nuclear transfer, the exact same process the orientation tape described. He took the nucleus out of a tadpole cell, put it in a frog egg, and grew a clone. That was in Scientific American, Reader's Digest, everywhere. So the public already had pieces of this in the magazine, and the film is telling you that. Which means the science in the orientation tape isn't fiction. The only fictional part is the scale. The journalist, Noble, brings the clone to Knight Sr.'s home. But Noble doesn't really fully understand what's happening. He thinks Richard's just looking for his father. Richard finds his genetic original, Richard Knight Sr. In the island, this meeting is played for comedy. Tom Lincoln is a sleazy guy. In Clonus, it's kind of horror. Knight Sr. looks at his own face on someone else's body and appears to be frightened. Someone did this to him without his knowledge. But interestingly, it seems he doesn't know about the cloning, or who or how they did it. But he knows something. What's that something? He has a brother. So basically, the clone has the tape, and it doesn't show it in the movie, but it's implied that they all watched the orientation video. And when Knight Sr. sees it, he says, "This is something the public isn't supposed to know about." Okay, but this is a crazy scene. We finally get to see who's the mystery man behind the phone. This is Walker? What the heck? He's the one who owns Walker Research Facility? Pretty crazy. But look at the ring. Notice how it has a triangle on it. So remember all that sexually charged stuff that I pointed out with Jordan and the island? Well, all that's here too. Go watch it for yourself. But basically, while all this is happening, back at the compound, Jameson's assistant goes to Lena, and he beats her, hits her, pins her down. Definitely a charged power trip. They strap her to this machine, and she's screaming. Remember, she's the one who remembered Adam and saw the frozen body. They're punishing her for knowing too much. And then we get the boat dock brothers scene. This is the most important part of the film, and it shows you that this isn't just a coincidence. So, Jeffrey Knight, the senator running for president that we saw at the beginning of the movie, is Richard Knight Sr.'s brother, the person who was cloned. And Jeff is connected to Clonus somehow. Richard obviously must have known that he had something to do with this. He just doesn't know the full secret. Guys, this is the secret scene. Remember the trade secrets line from the island? That's what this scene is. It's the boat scene. Richard, the knight, is about to get told the secret. And Jeff starts by confirming it. Alright, you know part of the story. There is such a project. It's still in the experimental stage. But the fact that you know about it leaves you sitting right in a keg of dynamite. And then he explains what it actually is. The whole thing is about organ transplants. Hearts, kidneys, lungs, all of that. If a person needs an organ transplant, his clone can provide him one very easily. And Richard asks the question, who is this place for? Jeff says, well, obviously not for everyone. That would not be practical or economical. For the select few, those the politicians decide. Then Richard says, why? You're going to create a master race? Jeffrey says, instead, think of the possibilities. Suppose Einstein had lived. Suppose Churchill or Roosevelt had been able to live for nearly 200 years. And then Richard says, or Stalin, or Hitler. Jeffrey says, clones are not humans. They're things. Richard says, they're people, exactly like us. And then Jeffrey says, if it were not for us, they wouldn't even exist. Then Richard tells him, you're playing God, Jeff. And then Jeffrey, he says, the ultimate intention is to help humanity. Richard says, then why keep it a secret? Jeff's answer, because as soon as the word got out, you know what they would really be saying. Why not me? It's not secret because it's immoral. It's secret because it's exclusive. So then Jeff tries to make it personal. That heart operation I had 2 years ago, that heart came from my adult clone. It's exactly the same as my old heart, only younger and stronger. Without it, I would not be alive today. My new clone is just a baby. Richard says, wait a minute, you have two? He's stockpiling these clones. Multiple clones per person. Meaning they do this more than once. And they're telling you in a 1979 movie. Then Jeffrey says, I'm offering you a gift certificate to life, and you turn your back on me? A gift certificate to life? This is when he reveals that he had to pull strings to get his brother cloned. In secret. Do you get it? This is immortality. What does this have to do with cloning? This conspiracy has its own social hierarchy, and even the President of the United States is just one more client. And then Jeffrey warns his own brother. Keep it capped. Even I'm expendable if it means keeping Clonus alive. So even the next president of the United States is expendable. And if you still didn't think that was enough, this is about to prove it. This is kind of advanced, but again, you already saw it with the island. Look at the film techniques used during the end of this Brotherhood boat scene. As we're being told the secret, the real secret, we get another camera metaphor. A nightmare sequence intercutting. This is literally that temple sleep dream from the island when Merrick is explaining the operation, and at the end, he wakes up. You remember what I said about that? This is literally the same thing. This entire film is a Freemasonic initiation sequence mixed with CIA MK Ultra, and the audience was just put through it. Go to sleep, nightmare, wake up. This is definitely the scariest part of the film, and it comes out of nowhere. Richard's having a nightmare where Lena gets a lobotomy. Something's very dark about this scene. But notice, it's obviously not just a dream. Again, it ends with him waking up as we're hearing this conversation between the elites. Do you get it now? The meeting on the boat was the revelation of the mysteries between brothers, and the dream sequence was a nightmare where he experiences trauma and is forced to forget. You learn the secret, now go to sleep. The lobotomy is what happens to the brother who breaks his oath. The whole structure is the ritual. Richard Sr.'s son, Rick, tries to help the clone escape. Jeffrey's friends, the people in the club, execute a cover-up. Richard Knight Sr. is murdered. Rick is murdered. And this is so messed up. There's a scene where the journalist, him and his sweet wife, literally just noble people, they had nothing to do with this. They're just chilling in their living room, and they're just bombed and exploded. Not really sure why they added that. It's a very weird shot. But basically everyone who knew the truth and or about the orientation tape was systematically eliminated. Okay, but this movie has a sad ending and a somewhat good one. So Richard, the rebel, goes back to save the clones and to rescue Lena. But his nightmare was true. Take note of that. She's already been lobotomized. Her mind is gone. She's an empty shell with a creepy smile. And the doctor sneers and mocks him. Welcome home, Richard. You like America? In Clonus, the system can erase consciousness while preserving the body. That's kind of worse than murder because murder ends a person, but lobotomy destroys the person while keeping the body alive for parts. So then Jeffrey Knight wins the presidency. He gives a speech. As president, my position will be that any suppression of rights or infringement of basic liberties are contrary to the foundations of this country, and such cannot and will not be tolerated. So it's all fake. Remember, there's a line on the island where he says the president has a clone, but it's never explained. Well, here you go. He's delivering a speech about human rights while wearing the heart of a murdered clone. The man who ordered the murder of his own brother, talking about human rights on national television. And behind him, the backdrop reads, Walker Industries. And George Walker's right there. So now we get to see him from the front. And Walker has an eye patch. One eye. The one eye symbolism running the entire cloning operation. In 1979. Still a coincidence? And during the speech, there's a dream sequence, and it shows the clone and Walker staring directly at the camera with one eye. The Knight is a puppet. Okay, but there is a good ending. From the back of the room, a reporter says, Senator, could you please tell us about Clonus? The tape got out. The sad ending is, Richard fails. He ends up dead, frozen in storage, and a single tear on his face. But think about it. The whole film revolves around this orientation tape. The orientation tape Richard found. The one he risked his life to get out. You just watched it. The movie is the orientation tape. That's what you've been watching for the last hour. The real disclosure. Okay, so I watched it through two films, 26 years apart. Both are technically connected to the files. I already showed you the Katzenberg invite through Peggy Siegel to Epstein to a private DreamWorks screening, which implies, although not proven, that Katzenberg and Epstein were aware of each other. Now you're thinking, okay, Clonus in 1979, The Island in 2005, two films with the same encoding, one went to the Pentagon and one went to DreamWorks. That's already pretty insane. Okay, but let's be fair, and sure, maybe Bay just copied all of this and they didn't know about the Masonic symbolism and it was all just an accident. Okay. But wait, there's an earlier film that proves this is not a coincidence. There's a third film, and nobody talks about it. Now, before I tell you what that film is, I did want to mention two films quickly. I don't think they're crucial to the case, but it's interesting. In 1971, 8 years before Clonus, a film was made called The Resurrection of Zachary Wheeler, starring Leslie Nielsen and Bradford Dillman. The plot is, a TV reporter witnesses a car crash. The survivor is a United States Senator named Zachary Wheeler. The senator is secretly airlifted to his covert facility in the New Mexico desert, near Alamogordo, near Los Alamos, so this is real military stuff. His life is saved using organs harvested from a soma, a mindless clone grown from his own DNA. The operation is run by something called the Committee. Again, a cabal of elites who offer immortality to powerful politicians. But the crazy thing is, it's blackmail. We saved your life, you get immortality, now do what we say. This is the first film ever about clones, and it shows them being grown as organ farms for the elites. In 1971, before Clonus, before The Island. But what's crazy is the screenwriters. Tom Rolfe, Norwegian Merchant Marine, then United States Marine Corps, 3 years active. After Zachary Wheeler, he went on to win the Oscar for Best Editing on The Right Stuff, and also edited Taxi Driver, Heat, and Jacob's Ladder. He got the idea for the script from reading about organ transplants in Esquire magazine. Jay Sims, his writing partner. Sims had already written The Creation of the Humanoids in 1962. This is crazy. It's a film about synthetic human duplicates, but it's literally cloning. They just cover it up calling them androids, but clearly they are organic. I would say this film is the earliest cloning movie. And look at the plot. When nuclear war annihilates much of the world's population, the remaining humans come to rely heavily on robotic androids to keep their fragile society afloat. Over time, the androids become so alarmingly lifelike and sophisticated that the Order of Flesh and Blood advocates ban them. It's all the same stuff. Two military connected writers, one concept, going back at least to 1962. James Watson's article, Moving Toward the Clonal Man. I'm not sure how many of you guys know about this, but this is where there was a Nobel Prize winner publicly warning that human cloning is coming. This was published in May 1971 in The Atlantic. And this is random, but there's also another Arnold movie called The Sixth Day, another cloning movie associated with sixes, eye scanning, and elites keeping this all secret. So there's a bunch of movies that have this symbolism. There are two tracks. Track 1, the idea that you can make a copy of a human being. This goes back to eugenics. 1883, Francis Galton, Darwin's cousin, coins the word eugenics. And let's not forget H.G. Wells in The Island of Dr. Moreau. That's from 1896. How do you explain that? A coincidence? Islands and Secret Experiments. Read the book. It's the exact same template I just showed you. 1910. Charles Davenport founds the Eugenics Record Office at Cold Spring Harbor, Long Island. In 1920, Carol Chapek writes RUR, the play that gives us the word robot. But it's the same thing. They are biologically manufactured humans, grown from synthetic organic matter in a factory, mass-produced as workers. It seems like they were being secretive about cloning. Then, 1923, J.B.S. Haldane lectures at Cambridge and predicts artificial wombs and ectogenesis. Both Huxley brothers are in the audience. Then, Julian Huxley, the evolutionary biologist who later became the first Director General of UNESCO and President of the British Eugenics Society, and Aldous Huxley, who in 1932 writes Brave New World. There's that 32. So, since 1932, they had already planned industrial-scale cloning, fertilized eggs shocked into budding up to 96 identical copies, gestated in artificial wombs. Track 2. The idea that you can take organs from one person and put them in another. 1954. Dr. Joseph Murray performs the first successful organ transplant. Then, December 3, 1967, Christiane Barnard performs the first heart transplant. This was a big media frenzy, and in 1967, the exact same year, Larry Niven publishes The Jigsaw Man, the first science fiction story to explore organ harvesting as a social system, and he coins the term organ legging. Okay, so then Tom Rolfe reads an article about organ transplants in the Esquire. He tells Jay Sims about it, and Sims, who had already written a film about synthetic human duplicates in 1962, puts the two ideas together. Okay, but this is about growing clones as organ farms for the elite in 1971. This is just the info known to the public. So the question is, how long has this really been going on? And another thing, in 1979, the same year as Clonus, in West Germany, a film called Fleisch, or Spare Parts. This is weird. A newlywed couple honeymooning in the American Southwest, husband abducted, wife discovers an organ harvesting clinic in Roswell, New Mexico. These two films are in two different countries, but it's the same concept, same year, but apparently there's no known connection. That can't just be an accident. It's the same thing with wealthy customers. And in 2005, the same year the island was released, a novel by Kazuo Ishiguro, Never Let Me Go. It's about clones being raised in a boarding school. They don't know they're clones, and they exist to donate organs. They just accept it. This was adapted into a film in 2010 by Alex Garland, the same writer who later did Ex Machina. So how do you explain all this? It's just all fake? It's all just a coincidence? What's being exposed here is template thinking. You learn the protocol, you run the protocol. You never deviate from it. That's how intelligence training works. You don't think outside the box because the box is the operation. And whoever is behind this media, they really aren't that creative. They couldn't even come up with a new movie. They literally just copied one. Same MK Ultra opening sequence, same Paradise Lost framework, same Masonic degree structure, same basic plot, the same template 26 years later, because that's the only way they know how to operate. Remember, symbolism will be their downfall. But we're not done yet. What I'm about to show you should blow your mind. This proves everything. It's not just me watching too many movies. What you're about to see is going to change the way you understand not just these films, but how the entire system operates. This is the proof. The film is called Seconds, directed by John Frankenheimer. That name may sound familiar. That's the man who directed The Manchurian Candidate, 1962, a film about a brainwashed soldier programmed by a communist conspiracy to become a political assassin, controlled by his own mother. The first major Hollywood film about mind control. It came out 1 year before JFK was assassinated. 4 years later, in 1966, the same director makes Seconds. I've never heard anyone talk about this film. But that's the point. It was nominated for awards, but it bombed at the box office. Paramount shelved it, and it basically became unavailable for decades. Essentially, it vanished. I'm about to show you why. So the film starts, and the first thing we see is an eye. Remember, 1966, and we're already starting the film with an eye. The sixes are not an accident. And I need you to understand the cinematography here because this is not a normal movie. Honestly, I'd say that this is the most advanced of them all. This is the OG. There are some interesting camera techniques in this film. I'll point it out because remember what I said about Clonus and the camera effects. Basically, it had all this distortion, but now Second starts out with the same distorted effect. Another really cool camera effect is the camera actually follows the character like a third-person video game, but from different viewpoints. Over the shoulder, down by the legs, close to the face. This is pretty next level for the 60s. So we're following a man through a train station, Grand Central. The camera shots are showing us both perspective, and then eventually, this stranger comes up to this man that he's been following from behind and then slips a note into his hand, very quickly. Then, the person's gone. This man on the train, Arthur Hamilton, looks confused. He looks out the window, and the mystery man is walking away. The note has an address on it, 34 Lafayette Street. So Hamilton goes home, and at night, he's waiting for a phone call. There's an interesting detail in this shot. Look at the phone. Do you see the 666? That's on the phone that connects him to the secret organization. And the movie came out in 1966. So the phone rings, and Hamilton picks it up immediately. This is a secret phone call. And the voice on the line says, "Art, it's me again." And Hamilton doesn't believe it, because this voice belongs to a friend that died. Charlie is dead. Hamilton says, "Stop saying that. Charlie Evans is dead. I'll call the police." But Charlie proves it. He tells Hamilton to walk over to the fireplace. Okay, pay attention. There are 2 trophies near this tennis team picture. And in the picture, Charlie and Arthur are standing with their arms around each other's shoulders. They're essentially brothers. Charlie says, "Take the doubles trophy there and turn it over." And guess what's underneath? Fidelis Aeternis. That's Latin for faithful to eternity. Art scratched it there himself with his belt buckle in the locker room after they won the finals. And he forgot about it. Charlie didn't. But as soon as he says Fidelis Aeternis, he remembers. That's how Art knows it's really him. Do you see what's happening here? This is a fraternity reference. You think he scratched that because of Latin class? Again, context. If you look at it alone, sure, you can explain it away. But you won't be able to explain it any other way by the end of the movie. This is a brotherhood reference. It's an oath between 2 friends, 2 brothers. He's in the club, and so is Charlie. Charlie has an offer for him. This whole scene has the same energy as the boat scene from Clonus. But take note of that phrase, Fidelis Aeternis, faithful to eternity, not faithful forever. I see that there's some people online translating it that way. Aeternis isn't an adverb, it's a dative. It's directional. Eternity is the destination. Faith, directed at eternal life. A personal oath between 2 college friends scratched on a trophy? This is a big hint for later. Can you figure out what it is? So Charlie gives him instructions. He says use the name Wilson and go to the address. But Art still can't process this. You can't be Charlie. You don't just come back. And Charlie says, I'm alive. More alive than I've been in the past 25 years. Another detail is Hamilton's wife knows about these calls. This isn't the first time apparently. So something has been going on for a while. Next, Hamilton follows the instructions. He goes to this place that looks like a dry cleaning operation, a steaming clothes place. The old steamer guy says they aren't here anymore and hands him a note with a new address. So now he goes to the real location, and the real location is a meat packing plant. A meat packing plant? Do you think that was by design? Next, they put him in the back of a meat truck. But listen, Hamilton says, "I'd rather ride in the front." But the driver refuses. This is the blindfold stage. He's put in the back of the truck in the complete dark. This is a meat company used as a front-end disguise. It's a real business, but the people who own it use it as an entrance to the real operation. And the company is called High Pro Meat Packing Co. And painted on the back of the truck, another load from Honest Arnie, the used cow dealer. So Hamilton arrives at wherever this meat truck took him. We know it's an office. He sits down, and a lady gives him tea. Okay, get ready, because we're deep down the rabbit hole now. He drinks it, takes off his coat, and gets comfortable. Within a minute, a sound effect goes off, his face changes, and it's clear that he's been drugged. So he falls asleep, and now he's in a dream. But it's not a normal dream. He's walking through a room with a checkerboard floor, clearly a nod to masonry. Everything is distorted, stretched, like an LSD hallucination. And there's a woman, in lingerie. She screams. He reaches for her, and the checkerboard pattern is on the floor in the hallway leading to the bed. Look at the distortion of the environment. This is Alice in Wonderland meets secret societies and body replacement in the 1960s. This is by far the most advanced and artistic film in our entire list. And the woman, well, it doesn't look like she approves of what's about to happen. She was screaming before it happened. Yeah, this is exactly what you think it is. Then he wakes up, and he's confused. He doesn't know what just happened. He tries to leave, but the elevator buttons are missing. He literally can't get out. So he's wandering around, and there's some kind of science lab. People working at stations. He's asking for directions, he's trying to talk to people, but everyone ignores him. Finally, a man in a white suit radios someone, and a voice comes back. Yes, that would be Mr. Wilson. Would you have him return to Mr. Ruby's office, please? So they send Hamilton to a man named Ruby. Ruby's kind of like the main director of this operation. Notice that his name is Ruby, a red stone. And take note about what he's offering him. He says, "I've been assigned to go over the circumstances of your death with you." And Hamilton's like, "What?" But Ruby keeps going. "The cost is $30,000, roughly $300K in 2026. And okay, so this is really weird. I'll let you be the judge. He says the organization has a department called CPS. And Hamilton's confused, like, what? CPS? And then Ruby explains. Cadaver Procurement Section. Yeah. But okay, so they need a fresh corpse that perfectly matches your physical dimensions and medical specifications. They need someone who looks like you to die so that they can fake your death with their body. Yes, this movie covers faking death for elite members. Remember that for later. Then Ruby starts going through death options. A hotel room fire, an explosion, a hunting accident, and even says, the question of death selection may be the most important decision in your life. Then, the trust department comes in. They want to change his will, make him sign a contract. His wife and daughter are going to think that he's dead, but they will get liberal settlements. Insurance, annuities, real estate. He signs. But who's this trust department? You ready for the craziest part? In order for Hamilton to go through with all of this, to receive this gift, the trust department, which, I don't know, That sounds pretty official. They need insurance. What type of insurance? You remember that trippy dream from earlier? You know what that was? Blackmail. They drugged him. I assume LSD, and then they influenced him to do you-know-what to that lady, and they filmed it. The man says, the drug made it easier to manipulate you into the proper positions and attitudes, and you did not ravage our girl, but the photography is clear enough. So what happened is, they drugged him with some kind of psychedelic, and while he was in an altered state, they manipulated him into a compromising situation with this woman, and they recorded it. This is 1966. Do you see it now? He didn't have a choice. But it gets even more mind-blowing. A man cuts him off and says, "Oh, I have a message from Charlie. He wanted me to tell you that rebirth is painful." Rebirth? There it is. We just went full circle. You can't deny it anymore. Rebirth. This is all about rebirth and faith to eternity. Renovatio. And this film says it in 1966. Remember, in The Island from 2005? They actually spell it out for you here. They literally say, blackmail. Isn't it easier to go forward when you know that you can't go back? So now they own him. They manufactured consent through mind control, the drugs, the manipulation, the recording. This is the control mechanism. This is a behind the scenes look at the operating system. Now it makes sense why the elites, politicians, and tech billionaires all act like NPCs. And then the old man comes in. This is the CEO or founder of the entire operation. Rebirth. Life again. Begin again. All new. All different. The way you always wanted it. This is it. This would suggest that the Island Network goes back to 1966. Do you get the Latin now? I told you that was secret society language. So does that mean Renovatio is the key to the entire network? Rebirth? So what is this rebirth process? Well, in seconds, they surgically reconstruct him. But they definitely are making him younger. It's basically Dr. Moreau, which is crazy because what if they could do this before the 19th century? Now, there is some strange backstory lore here that isn't fully explained. I'll tell you my thoughts. It's not clear whether they're just fixing his face and sculpting him into a new person, or if this is actually using another person's body. I'll explain why in a moment, but no matter what, for certain, this operation has the intended goal to make him look younger and more handsome. Then there's this creepy shot. His face is wrapped in cloth, like a skin mask, like a new flesh, a fake identity literally wrapped around his skull. Then look at this, his obituary in the newspaper, the New York Herald Tribune. That means they control the news. This is fake news. You're not gonna make me spell out everything, right? Now we see the new Hamilton. This is Wilson. He looks completely different. He's a better, slightly younger version of himself. Maybe 10 years younger? If he was 60, he kinda looks 40, maybe late 30s. But wait, he looks younger as it progresses. And this is something interesting. The same Asian actor from Manchurian Candidate is in the scene. His name's Davilo. He's essentially the rehab MKUltra handler who prepares reborns for their new lives. Davilo tells Hamilton they've recorded confessions of his true desires under pentothal and caffeine sodium benzoate. It's literally a pharmaceutical interrogation program. But this film's enlightening. They give him a whole new life, a career as a painter, certificates of study, diplomas from reputable universities. Hamilton says, wait, these can't be forged. And Davilo tells him, they can forge anything. Guys, that means they're all NPCs. Their jobs are completely fake. The implication is that everyone in the club gets these fake careers set up for them. Why do you think that is? Because they own the system. The entire system. The universities, the credentials, the documentation. All of it can be fabricated because the network controls the infrastructure. And they even say that they're gonna give him his first 6 one-man art show. 6. They don't even make him paint. Apparently they already have these paintings done. They're gonna supply him with work and pass it off as his. And I'm looking at this thinking, this seems like a money laundering scheme. They create a fake artist, provide the work, display it at their galleries, and move money through the sales. The entire career is manufactured. He even gets a Malibu beach house, a new name, Tony Wilson, and now he has dark hair. So he does look to be around 30, completely reborn. And he has identity shock while he's on the airplane to his new home. He can't get used to his new face, his new name, his whole whatever this is. So they gave him pills to help him adjust. So, the rebirth process comes with medication to suppress who you actually are. So Wilson lands, and on his way out of the airport, someone recognizes him. This is what I was talking about earlier. I think it's a clue. They don't really expand on it, but Wilson's definitely curious about how this man recognized him. My theory is they used someone else's body for the surgery, and who knows how far it goes. But I would say it's not just sculpting the skin and bone. Anyways, so he gets to his new beach house and is getting used to his new life. He has a butler who knows about the operation, and he's trying to paint at his beach house. And by the way, he's actually somewhat decent, which is interesting because the old Hamilton apparently did watercolors too, or the skill came from the donor. Again, more mystery lore. But one day, he's out walking on the beach and there's a random woman wearing a black hoodie on the beach, almost like a hooded robe. This is Nora. We know the template, right? Nora's the exact same archetype as Jordan in The Island and Lena in Clonus. The female wisdom figure mixed with Lilith. This is subtle at first. It's not obvious right now, but there is a clue in the scene. She goes to the ocean to ask a question. Basically, she's doing divination. She's asking nature for answers. Take note of that for later. So they meet, they hit it off, and they go back to her place. But pay attention. Now let me show you the shot. Now, if at the beginning of this video, I told a skeptic, you see that triangle to the left? That was put there on purpose, and it relates to secret society initiation. Most people would brush it off, right? I mean, to be honest, even I brushed this one off at first. It does look just like a prop set. Okay, but guess what the next shot is? Another checkerboard floor. So Nora has a checkerboard floor at her house? This is an initiation scene. There are different levels. First, you are reborn, but then you have to continue the path. That's what's happening. And if you thought I was reaching with a divination in the ocean, well, now she's doing it again. But this time, with grape leaves. She's divining with the leaves. So she is like a psychic, she's a pagan priestess. This makes the female wisdom and Sophia reference so much more obvious. I told you about this pattern in The Island, in the Clonus, but now we can see it clearly. She tells Wilson there's still a key unturned. Pay attention to what she's saying. The cloning stage, the body replacement, that's just the first stage of initiation. The surgery, the new face, the fake career. Step 1. Now he has to go through the enlightenment phase. That's a whole nother act. Also, do you see the pair on the table in the background? Just an accident? He is Adam. This is Lilith. Alright, it's about to get insane. So Nora invites him to go to a party. But it's not a normal party. It's a pagan rite. What happens next is probably the most disturbing part, and it's from 1966. Wilson and Nora drive to some kind of party. She connects it to turning the key in some type of rite. So that's all we know as the audience going into this. So when they get there, the woman leading it is dressed like a pagan goddess. So that's the template. She is a female pagan goddess figure. This is Sophia, and they copied it in every movie. Then the music starts. It's Pan. This is a bacchanalia. And I'm not being metaphorical, literally. They're at an outdoor wine festival, grape stomping, music, drinking, and the energy starts to escalate, and these people are getting drunk, wilder, more primal. And then the women start undressing. One woman gets naked in the wine barrel. She's the queen of wine. Okay, not too bad. But then a man gets in, and then another woman, and then they're all naked, drunk, stomping grapes together. And look, on the surface, you could argue this is some nature celebration, like some European harvest thing. Nothing explicitly sexual. Context. There's a statue of Pan. This is idol worship, with sixes throughout the film. And there are children in the scene. I have to point that out. There are multiple children throughout the scene, and the adults are progressively getting more naked and more frenzied while children are present. To me, it looks like the men are significantly older than the women, but you could be the judge. And then someone says out loud, "Bacchus, give us blood, so we may be born again." Rebirth. Renovatio. It's the same thing. Rebirth through ritual, through blood, through the god of wine and ecstasy. They aren't even hiding it. And Wilson's seeing all this like, what's going on? Because he hasn't been initiated into the cult yet. He's a client. He just joined the club because he was promised immortality. But it doesn't end there. You have to continue. Nora is the esoteric guide pulling him in. The exact same role Jordan plays in The Island, pulling Lincoln into the real world. The exact same role Lena plays in Clonus, connecting Richard to humanity. Except here, it's explicit. And then it escalates. Nora joins in, gets naked, and wants Wilson to join. He tries to pull her out because he cares about her, but they all pull him in and force him to participate. He eventually just gives in. So time passes and Wilson is settling into his new life with Nora. He loves her, he's painting, he's accepted this new reality. Okay, but there's another clue. There's another party scene, and in one shot, Wilson's talking to an older lady, and she's discussing about how they change sex every month. That's fraternity talk. Sex, S-E-C-T-S. Right now we're in Aztec. So they change every month, and they're like these different sect rites. She even says virgin sacrifice as a joke. Okay, so during this party, Wilson gets drunk and starts singing some Harvard alumni song. And while drunk, he says his name, Arthur Hamilton, his old name, his real name. Immediately, one of the guys at the party says, "Looks as if our host is in orbit." And so they all grab him and pull him aside. Then we find out, everyone at this party is in on it. They are all reborns. They know. They actually call them reborns. And then Nora freaks out. Her voice changes, almost demonic, and she says, "Shut up, just who do you think you are?" And it clicks for Wilson. Everyone is in on it, even Nora. She must be a reborn too. Actually no, it's worse than that. Nora isn't a reborn. She works for the company. The company provided Nora to Wilson. He didn't meet her by chance on the beach. She was assigned to him. She was his handler. She initiated him into the ritual. So this basically shocks Wilson. The movie doesn't explain it well, but it causes him to have an identity crisis. He realizes he has no choice. Every aspect of his life was designed by this company. So he decides to go back to visit his old family as his new face, Tony Wilson. He just shows up because he wants to hear what his wife really thought about Art Hamilton. He walks in, and there's a photograph of himself. Here you go. You can see immortality right there in the frame. He introduces himself to Emily as a painter who admired Arthur's watercolors. He asks if he can take one of Arthur's paintings from the garage as a memento. So she starts to open up, and she's honest. She tells him all about Arthur. He was a quiet man, and the thing that she remembers the most were his silences. She tells him that the relationship was dead long before Arthur died. This makes Wilson upset, and as he's leaving the old home, do you know what memento his old wife got him? Emily offers him a memento, but it's not a painting. It's something to remember Arthur by. She grabs the trophy, the doubles trophy, the one with Fidelis Aeternis. Again, it's showing he has no control, and his faith is to eternity. So Wilson realizes he can't go back and he can't move forward. This new life isn't his, the old life is gone, and the company tells him that there's a process for this. So the reborns can start over again. That means the elites can have multiple rebirths. But in order to do so, he needs to recommend his own sponsor. He needs to recruit someone new into the program. That's how it works. It's a word-of-mouth operation. They can't advertise in the newspapers. Each reborn recruits the next one. A pyramid, a chain. And then they bring him to a room. In this room is the waiting area we saw earlier in the film when Hamilton first arrived. There's people sitting in it silently, staring, not talking. Some of them are drinking water. Seems like they're putting medication in it. And there's a bell. The bell is a conditioning signal. This is MK Ultra, in a waiting room. The people are being sedated and conditioned while they wait. That's why they don't speak. But we found out that this man from earlier, who wouldn't speak to Hamilton when he first came, was Charlie. Wait, why didn't he say anything before? Well, now that he's a reborn, apparently they can talk now. So, the reborn proves to Wilson that he's the real Charlie by saying, Fidelis Aeternis. That's how they identify each other, through their oaths. Basically, we find out that Charlie recommended Art so that he could get his second reborn. So it seems like he had to wait in this room. But now, Charlie's getting his next rebirth. Ruby then sits Wilson down and tells him, look, you need to find a sponsor. But Wilson says that he can't really think of anyone. Ruby says, you don't seem to understand our problem. Wilson tries to stall and asks if sponsoring someone would delay his own surgery, buy him time. Ruby says no. And Wilson says, I'm sorry, I just don't seem to be able to think of a single soul. And Ruby says, you mean you deliberately won't? Have it your way. You can go back to the day room. Wilson leaves, and Ruby picks up the phone. Processing, please. This is Ruby. I think we can go to the next stage now. So Wilson goes to the old man, and we find out that he's the founder of the company. Wilson tells him that he has to be allowed to make his own decision. And the old man says, I sure hope to make it. We do have a high percentage of failures. So basically some reborns make a go of it, some don't. The organization is way too big now, board of directors, profit sharing basis, financial responsibility, so he can't shut it down even if he wanted to. He says, we make mistakes, but we admit them and go forward. And then transportation comes. Surgery? Right now? Wilson didn't expect that. They put him on a gurney and strap him. Wilson's like, but wait, there's things that we have to talk about. My identity, the thing that I'm going to be doing on my own. It's such an important choice. And the old man says, everything's going to be fine. Just remember, son, we got to keep plugging away at the dream. Then a man shows up and introduces himself as Dr. Morris. He asks Wilson, what faith was he raised in? Protestant? And then he says something crazy, which is a clue. He says he's qualified to care for him in any faith because he was ordained in each. Rabbi, priest, and minister. All three? One man? And Wilson starts to realize what's actually happening. What's going on? When we finished, you will go on to the next stage. And Wilson's screaming, I want to know what's happening to me now. They stuff his mouth and bind it shut. While Wilson's screaming through the binding, Dr. Morris reads scripture, Bible verses about resurrection and eternal life. In between the English passages, Latin prayers. And guess how the movie ends? A cranial drill. So a lobotomy. Just like Clonus. They don't reuse the body, they don't transfer consciousness. They drill into his brain and they erase him. Okay, understand what we just watched. This isn't a movie that just happens to share some themes with the other two. This is the entire pipeline, laid out. Stage 1, recruitment. Stage 2, blackmail and psychedelic drugging. Stage 3, body replacement or the cloning stage. Stage 4, the initiation. Stage 5, termination. The files show us the funding, the research proposals, the scientist on payroll. But the films show us the societal operation, how it actually runs from start to finish, how the puppet NPCs are created. If the files are the internal communications of this network, then I would argue the films are the public disclosure. You can see it now. You were given a pseudo-subconscious initiation against your own will. The argument would be, you agreed by watching the film. I would say that's wrong. You were tricked. It's literally that Alice in Wonderland scene. Under trance, you can be made to do certain things. You couldn't see it because you weren't given the right context. You weren't given the eyes, and you didn't have the framework. How is that fair? Think about the island now with the MK Ultra flashing sequences that you can't see unless you watch frame by frame. No one's gonna do that, especially for a 2005 movie. And you probably thought it had a good ending. The clones were freed. Yay, Lincoln 6 Echo saved the day. But now we can see it clearly. He learns the trade secrets of what happens. That French black guy let him go. Not because he didn't know that he was a clone, but it's almost a symbol for the French Revolution and how the Freemasons separated from their previous control system. So, the clones are actually a multi-layered symbol. Yes, on the surface they represent the harvesting, but now we know another secret layer, at least with the ending when they all escape. The clones then become initiated and escape. They learn the truth, and then they enter the real world. The clones are the puppet NPC fake career politicians, not us. Who are the clones? They are reborns of celebrities. It tells you in the film. Literally, the president has a clone. So did his clone escape too? They are let out into the world. They are the reborns. You would never see that unless you watched all three films. Merrick allowed Lincoln to wake up. Basically, that's a documented 60-year chain of this concept, and as many of you know, it goes even further back. Even in this video, I showed how this science, even in the mainstream, goes back at least into the late 19th century. But there's evidence to suggest it goes back even further. This isn't new, and it gives insights on how secret societies view resets, repopulations, and relate it to biblical narratives. What if secret societies have had this technology for hundreds of years? Meaning, they are actually in control of resets. That's why I showed you Michigan Central. I'm not telling you what to think. I watched it through it, and I showed you. You can see it. You've been able to see it the whole time. You just didn't have the framework. This is the bug in their system. The same template thinking that makes their operations work is the signature that exposes them. They left their fingerprints everywhere because they don't think you were smart enough to see it.